What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Or fan? Or nobody? I'm not entirely sure how many people are here, how many people are going to be joining us in the next few minutes. Don't know if you guys all caught the tweet that went out that announced that the show is going early. Don't know how many people actually subscribe to the channel. Well, I do. There's a number, the total of how many people actually subscribe. We got to get that up, by the way. Still shooting for 1,000 subscribers by the new year. That's the plan. Once we hit 1,000, we can put in things like super chats and stuff like that people have asked about. Helps out, obviously, helps things grow. Woody's here. What's up, Wood? Good to see you, buddy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm sure the regulars, everybody will trickle in as they notice that we're actually on and we're talking. Or people will watch it a little bit later. Had to go live a little bit early just to fit the day together the right way. Like I talked about yesterday, I got the fantasy draft tonight, but I got to get a few towns over by like 6:30. Those guys seem pretty intent on starting somewhat around time, which for us means by like 7:30. But I got to get my ass in gear. This way I could do this, knock this out, try and get off by like 4:30-ish, maybe 5 o'clock. Gives me an extra hour and a half that I can use on the finishing the football projections. Hopefully get them on the site before the draft. If not, they'll be up on the site after my draft tonight. One way or the other, football projections will be up on the website tonight for week one. And we'll start tackling shows and ongoing content going forward. As discussed, tomorrow I'm out of pocket. I'll be out for the U.S. Open all day. So we'll have baseball projections in the morning. I'll make sure those are up on the site probably tonight. But then lineup updates aren't going to be coming through tomorrow. It's going to be our second off day, I think, all season as far as updates go. And there won't be a show tomorrow. Back in business on Thursday. Handful of people here now. So that killed a couple seconds while people got in. Dennis says tackling, pun intended. Oh, did I throw tackling in there? Damn it. Didn't mean to do that. I don't think these things through. Words just tumble out of my mouth when I'm on these shows talking. Sometimes it comes together nicely. Sometimes there's things like that I would not have wanted to actually say. Anthony Taylor's here. What's going on, buddy? And good to see you too, Dan. So, interesting little 10-gamer. We've got a lot of top-end pitching available today. We're just going to kind of dive on in, and we're going to go through this one because, again, got to get like up and out. But some good pitching, some really good hitting environments, 10 games to choose from, 0 weather concerns. The one note that Roth had was Colorado at Atlanta, winds left to right and in from left at 10 miles an hour. Maybe impacts a little bit of the power on the Braves. Braves are showing nearly a 5-run total as one of the most appealing spots for considering some stacks on the board. And their opponent at a sub-3. And the premium pitcher going for the Braves, Chris Sale, obviously supported a little bit by those conditions. So it's just a good note as far as I'm concerned. That one's he's got green and there's no other notes on the weather board. Starting out in Toronto, Phillies at Toronto, a 9-run total. They're pretty healthy totals on both sides. It's Chris Bassett, who we know can be good. We know can eat innings, but we also know he can be pretty gettable on the wrong day, and that is a pretty good Phillies team. They're showing a little bit of power against. Kyle Schwarber looks pretty good above the magic number. The usual suspects landing in pretty solid mid-range power marks. Tyler Phillips on the mound for the Phils. Decent total, 4.69 for the home team. They're favored slightly with Bassett on the mound, 4.69 versus 4.40 for the Phils. Red Sox at the Mets, just an 8-run total there. 3.77 feels really low for the Red Sox. They're facing a lefty, which does diminish their offense from time to time, and it is a pretty capable lefty in David Peterson. He's on a stretch of pretty successful starts. I just don't love having the Red Sox below a 4 in that spot. 4 plus seems a little bit more accurate. Yeah, it's not a huge difference. We're nitpicking, but even if you gave them that, I'd feel a little bit like it's a little bit more realistic. Just seems like a low total for such a good team, even with the lefty thing in mind. Cutter Crawford on the mound for the Red Sox, a 4.31 implied total going toward the Mets. They seem highly playable as usual. The Rockies at the previously mentioned ridiculously low 2.65 implied total going up against Chris Sale. Sale easily at the top of the pitching board, but there's at least Paul Skeens nipping in his heels projection-wise. You've just had a little bit of shakier outings from Skeens lately, and we're going to start running into some lack of depth with Skeens, where none of that is a concern with Chris Sale. And a 4.98 total for the Braves. They're going against Kyle Freeland. seems like a really targetable spot. I'm really not concerned about that weather report. Despite a little bit of wind blowing in, I think you still fire away with those Braves bats. Even though they've been shaky and up and down this season, that's a pretty appealing looking spot. Pirates at the Cubs, just a 7.5 run total there. Pretty close on the Vegas board. Both teams fairly low end looking. The Pirates, with Paul Skeens on the mound, seemed like a great spot. And you can see a 3.69 implied total on the Chicago side. But the Pirates not monster favorites, despite facing Kyle Hendricks, who is no knock 'em dead kind of a pitcher. So it's another one where this feels a little bit light. I feel like the Pirates above 4 would have been perfectly fine here and pretty realistic. It's partly a product of having the low overall total for the game, reflecting the Skeens side of it. But I think it's maybe a sneaky, slightly better spot for the Pirates bats than it might seem like in that Vegas number. And then Skeens, I think you just fire away against the Cubs, who are a little bit vulnerable to right-handed pitching anyway. And the downside with Skeens has not been bad. He had 2 earned runs in his last game. He only went 5 innings in that one, struck out 6. 3 straight starts with 6 innings. One of them he gave up 4 earned runs. The other, outside of that start, he hasn't given up 4 earned runs all year. So, we're really quibbling if we're saying that he's been shaky lately. Just a couple more earned runs in some recent starts, but very, very high end. The Guardians at the Royals, an 8 run total in that one, 4.10 implied total for the visiting Guardians, just a 3.99 implied total for the hometown Royals. It's Brady Singer, it's Tanner Bybee. 2 capable pitchers. I don't love the matchup on either side. Both of those teams are good. Both of those teams are low strikeout. They've got capable bats. The Royals are a little bit diminished going from Vinny Pasquantino to Tommy Pham and a collection of other guys. That's a big downturn for them. But it's a playable spot. Probably a 4 corners game and lean toward pitching, I think. 4 point, I've read the totals already. The Cardinals and the Brewers in the next one, 8 run total there. Very low total for the Cards. The visiting Cards, 3.67 implied total there. They're going up against Aaron Savali, who has kind of pulled it together in recent starts, and basically since joining the Brewers, he's been better. So, seems playable, and a very low total for the Cardinals, who have been up and down all season. And then a 4.42 implied total for Milwaukee. They're going against Steven Matz, who is highly gettable and has not pitched in the show since April 30th. I actually forgot to grab his rehab game log. Let me do that now. Matz. Steven Matz. Yeah, there we go. So he made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 appearances in AAA in August. Several short outings to start out. That's why it totaled up to so many outings. They were all technically starts. Actually, those are separated by 5 days. Just a couple, building them up. A couple 2-inning starts to begin it. Got out to 5 innings in one of them. But a highly, highly targetable pitcher historically. He is capable. He was probably never really delivered on the prospect pedigree that he came up with once upon a time. But he's been good in spots in the show. Just seems like not the right day to be messing around rostering Steven Matz. And the Brewers at a 4.42 implied total. Jackson Chourio coming off a monster day at the top of the lineup. Seems like a pretty playable day for the Brewers bats. Yanks at the Rangers. Yanks drawing one of the biggest totals on the board. Second overall team behind the Dodgers, I believe, on our stacks board. It was them, the Dodgers, the Phillies up at the top. The Braves were creeping up there. But Yanks look pretty solid. They're going up against Andrew Heaney. And then the Rangers at a playable 4.20 implied total, or 4.19 implied total. Not a bad squad to consider. There's a lot of good bats at very good prices up and down that lineup. They're going up against Carlos Rodon, who has been shaky in spots this season, especially against some decent teams. So I don't love the Rodon play. I think he's on the board on a deep slate. You can get to him, but the Rangers bats might be a little bit better of a consideration there. Dodgers against the Angels, Battle of Los Angeles. Dodgers pulling a monster total at 5.21. They're going up against Reed Detmers, and then on the other side, a 3.90 implied total for the Angels, going up against Walker Buehler. Seems like a gettable spot with the Dodgers bats against Detmers, but Detmers is a talented lefty. Was pitching well in the minors. He was a big topic at the trade deadline, and they didn't end up moving him. Hasn't pitched in the show since June 1st. was not pitching well in the show over 63 innings earlier in the year. But there is talent there. It's just you're targeting the Dodgers if you go that direction. And then Buehler just has not been pitching deep, still yet to complete 5 innings in his return. 3 starts back, 4 2/3 in the last one. Given up a few runs, hasn't really found many strikeouts. Even against the Angels, seems a little challenging, especially with a lack of depth. The Mariners at the A's, an 8-run total in that one, 4.45 implied total for Seattle. They are showing an absolute ton of power at the top of the board. They're facing JT Ginn in his second overall start, what will be his 4th outing in the show. We'll give him a look. We'll consider the spot, but given how much power is in the Mariners lineup today as far as the home run model is concerned, definitely seems like a day we might consider some Seattle bats. And they'll be supporting Luis Castillo. Pretty good pitching play at the top of the board on his side. 3.65 implied total for the Oakland Athletics. The A's have been frisky. They've got that good power group at the top of the lineup, but it definitely falls off. There are strikeouts for a pitcher of Castillo's talent to go find, so I like the spot for him and his bats. Last game, the Diamondbacks at the Giants, just 7.5 runs on the board in that one. It's Kyle Harrison going for the Giants, and it's a much improved and continuing to pitch well Ryan Nelson going for Arizona. 3.95 implied total for the Diamondbacks, 3.63 for the Giants. Seems like a good pitching matchup and a good pitching environment. I think we could consider both sides, the arms on either side, and the bats kind of fall by the wayside on a deep slate. Definitely an interesting board. Chris Sale, obviously super expensive at the top. Let's say hi to people. Cujo's here. How you doing, Cuj? Bob the Builder, you're welcome, buddy. Glad you're finding the videos useful. Check out the site, rotoscouts.com. All the projections and everything are up there. There'll be football projections up there in the sometime tonight. All right. Let's see if we got any lineups in. Doesn't look like any lineups have dropped yet. We're early. Nope, I stand corrected. Are any of these on this slate? No, whatever. We'll do them as we get there. Like Cobain 4Ks or 5? How do you feel about Cobain? Ooh, I assume that's a typo. Unless there was a pitching change I don't know about. I'm trying to figure out who that would be a typo for. What's up, Ken Woodhouse? How you doing, buddy? Tom Playback, let me know who you're asking about there, 4Ks or 5. I'm not sure who you mean. Mamba's here. As far as I can tell, there's not a Cobain in the major leagues. I googled Cobain MLB, and the top result is an Instagram feed photo by Jason Cobain of a baseball. And then number 2 answer was a... I actually want to look at this. Kurt Cobain's age 8 Pee Wee baseball team photo is apparently for sale. That's weird. 1975. Anyway, I don't think you're. I don't think it was Cobain. That's why I wasn't sure what you were talking about. They're not on this slate. Corbin, Patrick Corbin. I don't have that game projected. I'm not a big Patrick Corbin fan. This isn't... Oh, wait, no. Is this teed up to this year? It is. So Corbin's just got a 17.6% strikeout rate. It's a good opponent. I'll give him that. But, I mean, we're not talking about much of a strike thrower, 25.1% CSW. He absolutely gets tattooed as far as hard hits and exit velocity, bad xFIP. The walks are fine. It's, you know... His prop is over 4Ks. I mean, you do have a pretty bad Marlins team on your side. Let's see what they're... Marlins strike out 24.4% of the time against lefties. Corbin has 2 games in a row over that total. 3 out of his last 5. 5 out of his last 7. Yeah, if it's 4, you're probably safe. He's beaten 4 a lot of times. Safe is probably the wrong word, but against that Marlins team, you're probably okay there. I would take it. Don't bet on Patrick Corbin is also very good advice, as Dennis puts in there. I wouldn't bet on Corbin for anything except giving up hits. Like, I mean, he's a guy who, once upon a time was quite a capable strikeout pitcher, and he's just completely fallen apart over the years. We're going back to 2019 at this point. 28.5% strikeout rate that year. 2018, he had a 30.8% strikeout rate. The years before that and every subsequent year, he's been in the high teens or low 20s, so 2 outlier seasons probably. But, a somewhat capable 1 in 5 kind of a pitcher going up against a 1 in 4 lineup against lefties does give him a little boost. He only needs 4, I think. I think it's okay. Like, if I wouldn't make the bet. Let's say that. I wouldn't make the bet on Corbin, but if you were going to make the bet, I would take the over. So let's get back to the slate we're talking about. Good question, though. Always happy to talk about those things. Jake Swale saying Corbin's changed up his pitch mix and has been looking pretty decent. Yeah, again, he did have those, a handful of pretty high strikeout totals, or not, 6-8 in that range over his last 5-7 games. So Chris Sale against the Rockies looks pretty dominant, top of the board, 11-6, 10-8, easy enough to get to. It's been super easy to reach high-end pitching with combining some of these teams that both these sites are just dramatically underpricing. So it's been really easy. Hopefully people use the Twins got there a little bit last night at those really cheap prices that we talked about. Yankees came through. That Yankees-Twins combination came through pretty well. So hopefully some of you guys got there. I didn't quite get there. I basically broke even on the night. I played 3 lineups. I forget what the actual spread was. I think 2 of them were Yankees-Twins stacks. Had Gilbert on one of them. He kind of let me down. I was hoping for a bigger game out of him. That was the main one. What killed me in that one was the Kepler scratch. It didn't actually kill me because the guys who I had to swap to came through, but it made me not like my lineup as much because I had to go from Jazz Chisholm to Gleyber Torres, who had a decent game. And then I went from Willie Castro to Brooks Lee, who had a very good game. But, this side of the lock, I didn't like it as much. Paul Skeens, easy number 2, 10-9. Nice little savings from Sale if you're not going that high. 9,800 on your DraftKings slate. As we get into September more and more, we will continue to monitor and be concerned about what the innings look like with Skeens. But so far, they've been at least giving him the full 6. He's got the upside to the quality start and just monster ability to dominate basically any lineup in baseball already. The Cubs, as we've talked about, a little bit vulnerable to right-handed pitching as far as strikeout upside goes. So all the reason in the world to consider Paul Skeens as an easy, second to Chris Sale, a 1A to Chris Sale's 1. However you want to look at it, that is an easy pivot. 1,000 less on DraftKings is a nice price discount there. So fire away with Paul Skeens. No real concerns. Luis Castillo against the A's looked pretty great. 10,000 on FanDuel, 9,000 on DraftKings. Fairly priced. Solid projections across the board. Similar ceiling. There's really not that much difference in ceiling between Sale against the Rockies, Skeens against the Cubs, and Castillo against the A's if he's got his good stuff going. At worst, I think the similar-ish kind of median projection is right where it needs to be. Bybee, tough road to hoe against KC. You can see there's a big dip from the projections, especially, we've got 2 solidly in the 40s into the mid-20s projections there, just under that threshold for one guy with Castillo. And then we take a dip down to just the 30 and just, barely scraping above that level range. Bybee, capable pitcher for sure, but KC's lineup is still low strikeout, even with Pasquantino taking a seat. and is still pretty quality. So challenging spot for him, but the price is right for that at 87, 82, and he projects fairly well. Connor Crawford, I really don't like in that spot, 79, 75. It's not like he projects well, but I greatly prefer the Mets bats in that head-to-head matchup. I just think that's a good Mets lineup. They're not pulling a monster projection or anything, but Crawford's a gettable enough pitcher. 79, 75. It's a very cheap price for a pitcher who projects like that. I just question what the relative ceiling is as far as him compared to those other guys up in that range. Rodon, going to be challenged to succeed against a pretty good Ranger squad, 96, 85. Pretty good like man for man, not necessarily results-wise in the standings. But it's a difficult spot for the lefty, and he's been very up and down this season. When he's got his good stuff working, he can be as good as anybody, but he can also have a pretty big downside. Bassett, very fairly priced at just 74 on DraftKings. 84 on FanDuel makes him extremely playable, even against Philly. He could get through that. He could give you 7 good innings against Philly, find a pocket full of strikeouts, and pay off these prices. That's not bad to find him. That said, greatly prefer the Phillies' bats, as does Vegas with that run total. Really like the looks of Ryan Nelson. Price has not come up commensurate with the performance at all on DraftKings. Pretty typical. 7,200 against a free-swinging San Francisco team in their ballpark with a low run total. That looks like a prime spot for Ryan Nelson, who, I mean, we've been talking about it for weeks now. We're on a stretch of, I think, 11 good starts. And I'm including the 2 where he gave up 4 earned runs as those in that group of good starts. But yeah, we're going back to the beginning of July when Nelson made that change that we've talked about. Since then, 2 starts with 4 runs allowed. One of those 2 starts with 4 runs, he only struck out 2. Every other start, 3 runs or fewer. Every start in that stretch, at least a shot at a quality start, except for one of them where he came out after 5. Pitched into the 6th, and another one gave up just 1 earned and struck out 9. But came out before the quality start. All the others booked the quality start. Several of them he pitched 7 complete or into the 7th. Last time out he pitched into the 7th. That was against the Mets. 2 earned runs on 2 solo homers. Gave up 8 hits, struck out 4. Not his best, but a nice deep start and a good for the money DFS start. The outing before that he struck out 7. Gave up 2 earned over 6 innings to Boston at Fenway. 6 strikeouts against the gettable Rays team, 9 strikeouts, 2 earned runs allowed, a solo homer allowed, or a homer and 2 earned runs allowed, I should say. Just 3 hits over 7 1/3 against Philly going back 4 starts. Ryan Nelson's been really good. Very, very, very much too cheap here. A little bit too cheap here. I would have bought 9,000 today. Happy to take him at the 200 discount. David Peterson really challenged against Boston, 8,500, 8,000. On the right day, you can find some clean innings and some strikeout upside from Peterson. And the Red Sox have had their scuffles against left-handed pitching, but I still don't love targeting them. That run total is oddly low, though. Brady Singer against Cleveland, kind of similarly challenged to how Bybee looks. He's a few points back. I think we're looking at a little bit lower end strikeout opportunity for Singer against that really, really stingy Guardians lineup, and he's a little lower strikeout in general, but he's also capable, 86, 78, not unfairly priced. Kyle Harrison against Arizona, they're somewhat successful against lefties over the course of the season. 7,700 across sites, though, is not a bad price to find a pitcher like Kyle Harrison. He's low 20s strikeout rate, a little bit of upside and ability. Ballpark on his side at the end of the night. I just prefer Ryan Nelson on the other side in the better matchup between the two and on DraftKings at a better price. As a tiebreak between them, if I needed it, maybe the savings, the 1,100 in savings between them on FanDuel would be enticing. Harrison is good, but the ceiling is a little bit limited. He hasn't hit those major highs throughout most of the season. Savali for just 81 and most notably for just 63 on DraftKings looks like a steal. 6,300 is just an absolute bargain for a pitcher who has kind of found his form recently. He hasn't been rock solid, but he's been very, very playable with some successful days, and he only cost 63 against a gettable Cards team. That totally works. Andrew Heaney, a lot less so at 6,000, but he could have the right, a good day, and he's beaten this Yankees team before. Not necessarily the exact same composition of hitters, but similar. So a low faith value dart in Heaney at 6K. 74 borderline playable on FanDuel at 74. Tyler Phillips, 75-67, value dart against a low strikeout, halfway decent Blue Jays squad. Buehler, I just really don't have any faith in anything beyond 5 innings. 69-7,000 for what he once was would have been a great price, but right now just doesn't seem likely. JT Ginn against Seattle. Again, they're showing a ton of power. I know we've been targeting him with pitching all season, and he's extremely cheap for that opportunity. But the Mariners themselves are showing a decent amount of power upside, so I might be looking a little bit of Seattle stacks. Detmers against the Dodgers seems like a no. He projects out bottom of the board here. For the pricing, it would be fine. But just in that matchup, it feels like a why would you kind of a spot. Steven Matt's pretty similar against the Brewers, 64-62. Kyle Freeland against the Braves, pretty hard no at those prices. And Kyle Hendricks against the Pirates, pretty hard no in his matchup. So just remember the two Kyles, the guys you haven't really seen much of lately, probably not a good idea. Pretty straightforward. All right, what do we got lineups-wise? Give this a reload. Come on, Lambs. Hit the like button while we're here. If you missed the very beginning, we started early today just because I have to get my fantasy draft in line. Got to get a couple towns over by like 6:30. Probably be a little late because I'll be sitting here waiting to confirm lineups. And then there'll be traffic when I get my Uber and everything, but close enough. But I'm trying to buy myself a little bit of time before that so that I can finish off the football projections and get them up on the site. If they don't go up before my fantasy draft tonight, they'll be up later in the evening around midnight or so. So, first game up, no lineups confirmed yet. Chris Bassett against Tyler Phillips, 67-75 for Phillips. He's made 6 starts, 36 innings, 5.50 ERA with a 4.11 xFIP. The xFIP's not terrible for a young pitcher just starting out. The 4.7% walk rate is compelling. A 10.9% swinging strike rate is not bad. He hasn't been a dominant strike thrower with just a 23.8% CSW against that, and he's only struck out 18% of hitters. But at least he's not walking anybody. He's pitched fairly clean in those categories, but he's given up a lot of barrels, a fair amount of premium contact and exit velo, and a high number of home runs in the small sample so far. It amounts to 1 home run allowed in his last game where he went 4 1/3 against Miami. Disappointing start there. I was hoping he would kind of gather himself in that one. Gave up 5 earned runs, struck out 4, walked 1. Not a successful day. Gave up 4 earned runs over 5 innings to the Dodgers, but kept them off the home run board the start before that, but only 3 strikeouts. Not a great outing. A meltdown in inning and 2/3 against Seattle was the big problem. 8 earned runs, 3 home runs allowed, a strikeout, and 3 walks. Just lasted an inning and 2/3, faced 13 hitters. That was on the back of his 9-inning complete game shutout, 4-hitter, 4 strikeouts, and a walk against the Guardians. And that one was piled on top of a 6-inning start at Pittsburgh where he gave up no runs on 4 hits, struck out 3, walked 1. I do think there's enough talent to realistically put up one of those kind of starts, maybe 6 innings, 3-4 strikeouts, keep the Blue Jays off the board kind of a day. For 67, you could throw that value dart, but we've got a lot more compelling value plays. So he's just kind of an also-ran value play on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I really don't think we're getting a full 9-inning complete game kind of an outing from him. We're pretty low strikeout. He does have the the win upside on his side. I question whether we get even a full 6 out of him. If all's going well, we'll get the 6. So he's probably a similar value dart, but you don't really need him. 7,500 on FanDuel. Bassett for 74 here, 84 over here. Definitely playable. Projects like it, solid mid-range projections, upper mid-range projections on today's slate. It's just, do you really want to target the Phils? Kyle Schwarber at 11-11 in the home run model. He's the only one above the magic number, but Harper's there at 9.75, as good as. 6.67 for a very capable Trey Turner. And then all the mid-range power that the Phillies have, in addition to their good ability to get on base, their solid run creation marks. Just seems like a tough team to tangle with a average-ish pitcher. 4.27 ERA with a 4.20 xFIP, 22.6% strikeouts, 8.5% walks, a way too high whip. He's been good at limiting home runs despite some medium-strength contact against, medium barrel rate. Bassett's not exceptional, but he can be good on the right day. Last year, better, 3.60 ERA, but a 4.21 xFIP, basically exactly the same there. Almost exactly the same strikeout rate. Lower whip, Getting him credit for that. Similar-ish contact, and it amounted to more home runs. It was actually lower hard hits and lower exit velo. I think I come down on the side of Phillies bats, but again, Bassett is playable here. Last time out, 6 2/3, a perfect example of what he can do. At Fenway against Boston, 6 2/3. It would be weird if it was at Fenway against somebody else. 6 2/3, 9 strikeouts, a walk, 1 earned run on 5 hits. Great DFS day, and he was fairly priced. 6 innings against the Angels, 4 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks. That's a downside day. A lot of starts like that one, where we're just borderline, we're shaky approaching the 6th inning, the quality start. The strikeout totals tend to be in the 6 or 7 kind of a range. He's got that general ability against the Phillies team with a 22.1% strikeout rate collectively. Not the greatest price on FanDuel. He fits, but he's not a priority on either site. But he fits. He's playable. Across 150, I would have some Bassett on either side, but probably not a lot. Phillies bats, again, more appealing. I like Schwarber in the top spot for 56.37. He's hit 28 home runs. He's got a 211 ISO, a 126 WRC+. Gets on base like crazy on the back of a great walk percentage at 16-1, so we don't care about his strikeouts. Very fairly priced for a dude with a ton of power who's always involved in this offense. Trey Turner at 59.35, superstar caliber shortstop. 123 WRC+, just a 162 ISO this year, 15 homers, 14 steals. Some of the counting stats might leave a little bit to be desired, but he's been a very good run creator. He's always involved in the offense, does hit the ball very hard. Just barreling it a little bit less this year, but he's striking out less. He's low walk, so it's a lot of balls in play. Interesting enough at shortstop for the pricing. Harper at 54.36, not a bad price to find Bryce Harper. 281, 371, 524 with a 242 ISO, 26 home runs. Hasn't really stood out in the second half of the season. Honestly, I feel like since the day that I traded for him. But still having a good year overall. 143 WRC+, most notably to lead a very good Phillies team. 9.7% barrels, 47.7% hard hits. Still a very good option at first base. And again, pushing right up against the magic number for a home run today. 4,300, 3,200 is pretty cheap to find Alec Moment on DraftKings. FanDuel, just an average price. 13 homers for Bohm this year, creating runs 21% better than average. Last man standing between him and poor Vinny Pasquantino, who's going to miss the rest of the season. 13.6% strikeouts, 6.8% walks, 45.8% hard hits, 6.9% barrels. He's been a little bit better in terms of the average. I forget what Vinny's on base. When Vinny's on base was like 315, I think. So average on base department, this is like, the higher end, slightly right-handed version of what I would expect Pasquantino to get up to in terms of the slash line, and Pasquantino was hitting for a little bit more power. That was the trade-off between the two, but they're very similar hitters in their approach at the plate in terms of being low strikeout, hard hit, and just drive the ball. Castellanos, 4,000, 3,100, 19 home runs on the year. He'll crack 20, get into the 22 kind of a range. It'll look like an okay season when it's all said and done. 99 WRC+. He can give you a little bit on the right day, but mix and match quality outfielder. Bryson Stott at 38, 28 across sites. 10 homers, 29 steals, capable of giving you a good day for counting stats at second base for a very cheap price on either site. He's always playable, but he's rarely a top priority in Philly stacks. That does tend to render him a little bit more low-owned than he should be, at least in my experience with stacking this team. So he's always on the board, but there are many ways to just dance around him at that position. JT Realmuto, 43, 3,000, 11 home runs, a 101 WRC+. Not his best year, but always capable of a big day, and still hits the ball extremely hard. 9.6% barrels, 44.2% hard hits. Brandon Marsh, 9.4% barrels, 48% hard hits for him. He strikes out a ton, but he walks at a decent clip, 10.3% walks against 33.6% strikeouts. Needs to cool off with the strikeouts a little bit, though. Last year, that was 30.5% strikeouts, 12.5% walks. He was better last year. Still gets on base at a good clip, though. 321 on base this year, 105 WRC+. Little power, little speed, 14 homers, 16 steals. Essentially the same counting stat numbers as Trey Turner up at the top of the lineup. It's just Turner's a better overall hitter, better overall player. But Marsh is playable, so is Austin Hayes if you need a cheaper outfielder. Mediocre slash line, 254, 305, 388. Nothing special about that. Nothing special about the 134 ISO. But this is a guy who's hit 20-plus home runs in the show, and he's very cheap at the bottom of the lineup. Against a gettable Chris Bassett. For the Blue Jays, George Springer off the top, 45, 3,000, 19 homers, 14 steals, looking like a better season for Springer. A lot of these guys that were struggling all year had a rush to kind of cobble their numbers together in the last month or two. He's up to a 96 WRC plus. Mostly decent just for the counting stats. The slash line's still ugly at 216, 301, 381. He's never going to be able to correct that this year. Not enough time left. But a lot of the other stuff looks okay, and for the cheap pricing, definitely playable against Tyler Phillips. Joker. Stop that. Licking his foot, and there's just this like wet slurping sound coming from over here. Don Varsho at 4,000, 3,000, 17 homers, 10 steals, a lot of inconsistency, a sub 300 on base, 2% above average for run creation, and nearly 200 ISO. He can hit for power a little bit. He's definitely decent for extra base hits. Just comes and goes with some of the opportunities, and I'm not a fan of hitting that high in the order with that bad and on base. Vladdy Guerrero at 56-36 has 27 home runs at 230 ISO. Pretty solid season at 324, 397, 554. Still one of the best hitters in baseball and still crushes the ball at extraordinary levels. 13.9% barrels, 56% hard hits this year. Notably better now than his last two seasons. Remember when everybody was worried? He's not hitting the ball hard. He's not elevating the ball. The barrel rate's gone. Low single-digit barrel rate. Forget it. Turned it on. Probably too cheap by $400 on DraftKings. Probably too cheap by $400 on FanDuel. Spencer Harwitz, good on base option, correlated scoring player, 39-29. First base, not ideal. Having him first base only on DraftKings. Second base eligibility on FanDuel pays the bills. 9 home runs, a 350 on base, a 120 WRC plus. Addison Barger, mix and match quality player, mid-range pricing, 32-25, third base and outfield across sites. 6 home runs in his 168 plate appearances, a 184 ISO. That's the good, but 209, 246 with a 77 WRC plus, pretty bad. Alejandro Kirk, a mix and match catcher with limited power appeal, but a very low strikeout, decent walk rate, so he can get involved. He just hasn't really. 313 on base and 88 WRC plus, not hitting the ball particularly hard this year, just putting it in play at a decent clip. So far, both Will Wagner and Nathan Lukes have hit the ball pretty hard in very small samples. Wagner's had more opportunity. 10.2% barrels and 51% hard hits in his 60 plate appearances. He's hit 2 home runs. He's got a 207 ISO. Seems like a quality bat so far in an extremely small sample. At worst, I think he's playable. Second base eligible on DraftKings for 3,000. You probably just book that instead of worrying about the fact you can't have Spencer Horwitz with Vladdy over there. Will Wagner, not a bad substitution in that equation. 2,800 at just first base on FanDuel. Not exactly ideal positioning. Loosely playable if you're building a bunch of Blue Jay stacks. He's more playable. Luke's no home runs yet, but supposed to have some decent power. 273 ISO so far in his 14 plate appearances, and has hit the ball very hard. Leo Jimenez at the bottom of the lineup, just a low-end option. 325 on base as a wraparound. Not ideal, but he has created runs positively. 3% better than average. Phillies bats. I'm going to go Jays. Phillies bats, Blue Jays bats, Bassett Phillips. All 4 sides of it are at least a little bit playable. The pitching more on price than on true ceiling. Red Sox and the Mets. So again, the Red Sox checking into this one with a really, really low run total. Still no confirmed on Labs. Good to see that Labs is back at work today, though. I know yesterday was a national holiday. Anybody do anything interesting for Labor Day? Big barbecues or water skiing or anything like that? Visiting our nation's capital? Whatever other people do on Labor Day? I guess that's more of a July 4th, Memorial Day kind of a thing. So I'm not seeing these lineups still yet. We do have a bunch of the other ones in. Starting with Crawford, 75-79 across sites. 22.6% strikeout rate for the projected version of the Mets lineup. They do have some Ks with some of their key bats. He's got a 22-1 on the season on the back of 11.9% swinging, 27.8% CSW. He's not unplayable. I don't love the option, but I mean, if Bassett's on the table against the Phils at basically the same pricing, You can't really say that Crawford's not on the table. He's cheaper on FanDuel against the Mets. These are okay numbers in terms of the results, but there's some underlying issues here. The strikeouts are all right. The swinging is obviously good. That's a low-ish CSW, though, for that good of a swinging strike rate. 4.12 ERA is not bad, but a 4.50 xFIP betrays it a little bit. The walks are fine. The hard hits and the exit velo are fine, but he's an extreme fly ball trajectory pitcher, and he's made a bunch of mistakes. That's what, the barrels pretty much represent in this equation. Hard hit on a certain trajectory. And it's resulted in a lot of home runs. So despite being a decent pitcher by Stuff Plus, having some fair results, this makes you a solid, 4-starter if you're putting up those kind of numbers. There is a little threat of power against for sure, and it could ruin his day in a hurry against a pretty hard-hitting team like the Mets. You can see 3 guys above the magic number in the home run model. You get a Brandon Nimmo at 8.11, just below it. And then a handful of, not overly impressive home run totals here, but some guys who are definitely capable of hitting the long ball in Jesse Winker, Starling Marte, DJ Stewart to some degree, and Francisco Alvarez based on what we saw last year. Note I left Jeff McNeil out of that. So I don't think it's an entirely safe spot for Crawford. He's not a priority, but he's definitely playable. He projects out just basically the same as Bassett does. No reason to really take him out of a pitcher pool. Probably like a 10-ish% max play in 150 lineups, somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit more on DraftKings just to open things up. But that's probably about where I'd want him. Peterson for 8.85, 17.9% strikeouts this year, a 2.83 ERA with a 4.38 xFIP that kind of betrays the quality of the results so far. A lot of hard hits, but he's a low launch angle pitcher so far this year. What was he? Yeah, low launch angle historically. Been pretty good over time at limiting power. He's been a better strikeout pitcher. This is a very small sample, obviously, but he's been a better strikeout pitcher in years past. 26%, 27.8% the last 2 years. 92 and a third, 16 starts this year, just 17.9%. He's walking a lot at 10%. Not a lot of swinging strikes, not a lot of CSW there. Last 3 starts, though, he went 7 innings at least in all 3 of them, pitched into the 8th in 1 of them. Last time out against the Diamondbacks, 7 innings, 2 earned runs on 7 hits, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, a home run allowed. Just 2 strikeouts against the Pods, but again, went 7 and a third, just 1 earned run on 5 hits. 7 innings against the Orioles, 2 earned runs on 6 hits, 8 strikeout game, gave up a homer, but who cares? Just 4 strikeouts with 4 walks back on August 14th, but went 6 and a third in that one against the A's. 1 unearned run on 3 hits. 4 strikeouts, 4 walks isn't great. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks the game before that isn't great. But he only gave up 1 earned run at Colorado over 5 innings. He's been pitching well in terms of limiting runs. It's just we don't really spike big strikeout totals this year. Had 2 8 strikeout games as his season high. Against a 25.2% projected strikeout rate overall for this lineup, and a team with a, let me get back to the board. I had it teed up. Lefties. Red Sox active roster this season against lefties, 26.3% strikeouts. When we're looking at Ks in a very small sample, Tristan Casas has been egregiously high against same-handed pitching at 36.7%. O'Neill, despite being right-handed, is striking out 32.1% of the time against lefties. Sedan Rafaela at 32.8%. Goes up from his 25.3 for the season. Devers, 31.3%. Goes way up against lefties. Abreu, 30.9%. Not in the projected version of the lineup. For a reason. He's slashing 176, 236, 275 against lefties. So there's potentially a lot of Ks on deck for Peterson. It just depends on the form. If this guy shows up, as far as the strikeouts go, or probably more preferably this guy, because this guy was good at also limiting runs while this guy had a 5.03 ERA. But if one of those versions of Peterson shows up, and he has a couple times with those 8 strikeout games this season, pretty decent strikeout upside. Again, I think it is a threatening Red Sox lineup, even with their limited success against lefties, even with their high strikeout nature against lefties. There's a few righties in there that are sneaky good against left-handed pitching, like Rob Refsnyder, like Romy Gonzalez, Connor Wong a little bit. But maybe it is a decent opportunity for Peterson. I still think the Red Sox deserve a 4-run total here. But, yeah, I think we get away with it at 8,000, 8,500. I just wish he was a little bit cheaper on FanDuel. Better spot on DK. Red Sox bats against, if we're looking that way, resorting this table to get to our best players against lefties. So despite all the strikeouts, Tyler O'Neill does have a 194 WRC plus on the season against left-handed pitching with 11 home runs and just 137 plate appearances in the split. He's got a 369 ISO against left-handed pitching, 306, 431, 676. So that makes me care a lot less about the 32% strikeouts and want some Tyler O'Neill if I'm picking up Red Sox against David Peterson. Jarren Duran loses a decent amount of his quality. 258, 325, 365. Most notably, takes a chunk out of his on-base percentage. 27 points lower by on-base. Doesn't really hit for power, but I actually care more about the on-base with him in the leadoff spot. Dips to a 92 WRC plus and 198 plate appearances against Sam-handed pitching. 4 home runs, 8 steals in that sample, 24.2% Ks. Refsnyder, 284, 376, 491, bounces right back. I would actually consider maybe a leadoff Refsnyder. I know it's probably blasphemy at this point. Move Duran down against lefties, but they probably won't do that. 6 home runs on the season for Refsnyder against lefties in just 133 plate appearances, a 138 WRC plus. He's been very good as a platoon option. Romy Gonzalez, 322, 388, 533 in 103 plate appearances against lefties this year. 4 home runs, 4 steals, a 152 WRC plus, a 211 ISO. Romy Gonzalez hits the ball pretty hard and has in his mixed amount of samples. He's not an all-star, but he's 3,100 and he fits in at second base on DK. He's 2,500. He fits in at 4 positions on FanDuel. Hits the ball hard against everybody overall and has been very, very good against lefties this season in a limited 103 plate appearances. But if you're going to Red Sox, Romy Gonzalez is a high priority bat today. Connor Wong, 295, 372, 467. Grading runs 32% better than average. This is why we're talking about a very solid group of players here that are above average creating runs against lefties. This is why I struggle with why the Red Sox have a sub-4 total. I get that Peterson's not a bad pitcher. I'm saying that. But I'm also saying that the Red Sox should be above 4 runs here. Devers dips to 242, 303, 399. There's part of your problem. 4 home runs in 195 plate appearances, just a 90 WRC plus, a 157 ISO. He's more skippable against lefties. You never really feel comfy skipping Rafi Devers when you're going to the Red Sox, but there's justification for it in these numbers against the lefty. If you wanted to grab guys around him, it probably wouldn't be my preferred approach still. I would just buy the upside. Hope for a couple plate appearances against a righty out of the bullpen, maybe. Who knows? But I get it. Connor Wong, again, for 4,000, 3,000. Highly, highly playable in this split. Casas, a lot of Ks. 2 home runs in 49 opportunities against the lefty. A 182 ISO in a small sample so far this season. Danny Jansen is at 242, 363, 318. So getting on base pretty effectively over just 80 plate appearances. Just 1 home run on the board. Mix and match quality catcher against the lefty, and then Rafael has been pretty bad. For the Mets, I think they're the more playable of these 2 stacks, given the power that they're showing, given the lack of concerns about a righty being on the mound. I think you fire away with Mets bats. Frankie Lindor off the top, 57, 37 across sites, 29 homers, 25 steals, a 342 on base. Excellent table setter, good power bat, good stolen base option, low strikeout, medium walk. 13.5% barrels, 47.2% hard hits. Absolute superstar, 10.99 on the home run model. Looks pretty good to me. Brandon Nimmo for just 46.32. A capable player. He's not having the best year, as we've looked at a number of times, but he is still hitting the ball hard. 9.2% barrels and 47.3% hard hits. 18 home runs, 12 steals, a 115 WRC plus. Not a bad option at all at those prices. Vientos is coming down in price. 4,500 on DraftKings. We're at 21 home runs, a 257 ISO, a 144 WRC plus, 282, 338, 539, and a number of rants about him being way too cheap. Continues to be priced like that. 3,100 on FanDuel, both corner infield spots. Leads the team today with a 12.39 in the home run model. I don't know what we can do to get his price up. I don't know what he can do at this point. They just seem determined to keep him cheap. Take advantage. It's a great opportunity in the middle of the Mets lineup. Pete Alonso, 51-32, has 30 home runs on the year at 227 ISO. Looking like a better power season overall for Alonso. 11.86 in the home run model. He's never going to be the most consistent guy, but he's got tremendous thunder in that bat. 12.5% barrels, 44.8% hard hits this season. A lot of upside in Pete Alonso shares for a very fair price at first base. Jesse Winker for 36.29 against a gettable righty like Cutter Crawford. Not a bad option. Gets on base at a great 370 clip. He creates a lot of runs at a 126 WRC plus. Mid-range power and steals, 13 homers, 14 steals. Not a terrible option. 270, 370, 427. He's been quite good this year. McNeil's just a slap hitter, 33.28. If you want to buy a little, roll the dice with some BABIP, go for it. He's not unplayable at those prices. I prefer him at second base than in the outfield, but definitely my least favorite hitter that the Mets roll out there. Starling Marte for 42.29 gives you a little bit, 7 home runs and 14 steals, 318 on base, a 105 WRC plus. Not his best year, but he still does hit the ball hard, 44.7% hard hits. Medium strikeout, low walk, so decent amount of balls in play. A lot of ability to fill counting stats on the right day. He can definitely spike you a nice solid day, and he's never the most popular Met for a cheap price. DJ Stewart, lefty with a little bit of pop in the bat, 5 home runs and 190 chances this year. Limited success otherwise, 175, 326, 299. It's actually decent on base given the 16.3% walk rate and 190 plate appearances. Just an 89 WRC plus though. You're just buying a cheap lefty power bat. You can get there, but it's not ideal. Francisco Alvarez, mix and match quality catcher right now. 6 home runs, a lot of upside. Definitely can play him even in the 9 spot in the lineup if that's where he's hitting. Would obviously prefer him like 6, but he hasn't really been that bat this year. Just 6 homers, 233, 294, 369, 11% worse than average for run creation. It's been a little rough for the young catcher, but we expected that. Man, this is really tough to rank, honestly. It is, to me, all 4 corners. I guess we got to put the Red Sox on the bottom of it, given that low 377 total. Mets bats. Peterson. Crawford. Red Sox bats. I think the Red Sox bats are more on the board than they're getting credit for today, but I don't think they're necessarily a high priority, given the low run total of the lefty on the mound, etc., etc., etc. Rockies, we do have this lineup in. Oh, Mets lineup did come out, by the way. Alvarez in the 9 spot. Winker 5. Marte 6. Jose Iglesias into the lineup. Jeff McNeil. Francisco Alvarez. So as I continue to say about Iglesias, finding success base hit-wise, hitting for good average, getting involved, decent WRC+, but probably not truly that hitter. Playable, but fairly low end. Braves lineup I don't think is in just yet. Oh yeah, it is actually. Perfect. We are just looking at Chris Sale at the very top of the pitching board. We'll talk about the Rockies, obviously, but seems like a pretty low-end opportunity for them. Even loading up on righties and switch hitters. Not a great look for the Rockies against Chris Sale, who has a 2.58 ERA with a 2.54 xFIP that's just slightly better. 32.4% strikeout rate, 5.6% walks, a dominant 14.1% swinging strike, 33% CSW. As I pointed out the other day, this is why you can't fully just go by Stuff Plus. This guy's got great stuff. We've seen guys, 114 Stuff Plus rating, but mediocre numbers. We've seen guys like Chris Sale, who's been the best pitcher in baseball this year, or top 3, and just utter dominance across his numbers in 25 starts. Rates out technically a point and change below average with his arsenal. So, it's very. I like Stuff Plus. I think it's a really interesting way to measure a pitcher, but I think it's informative, not predictive. I think it's it tells us about like the nature of it. It's difficult to explain what the nature of a pitcher, but not necessarily what his outcomes are going to be. Not necessarily even what his likely outcomes are going to be, which again is predictive probability, whatever you want to call it. So we've got it on the board because I think it's interesting, but you don't want to exclusively go by it because obviously we're talking about an absolutely elite pitcher. He's been extremely good at limiting power, premium contact, inducing weak and medium contact. If guys even are able to put bat on ball, 8.4 degree average launch angle, so he's keeping the ball down when guys manage to actually connect with it. Everything you could want in a pitcher. 10-8, 11-6. I guess you could want him to be a little bit less expensive, but can't do anything about that. Kyle Freeland, just a target for Braves bats. 7,600, 5,500, 18.1% strikeout rate, a 5.51 ERA. A 4.28 xFIP is definitely better, but just 8.3% swinging strikes, 24.9% CSW, giving up a lot of barrels, a lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo. We're at the threshold, way over the threshold here. Probably a little lucky to just be at 3.77% home runs, considering that terrible contact and the Coors Field factor that he pitches with a lot of the time. Not a good season out of Kyle Freeland. You can occasionally pick off depth. Last time out, 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 hit ball, struck out 5 against the Marlins. 6 2/3, pretty good start against the Yankees. Just 2 earned runs, 3 runs total on 5 hits, but only struck out 3, walked 2, gave up 2 home runs. Strikeout highs, had a 9 strikeout game over 6 2/3 against Cincinnati back in early July. 8 strikeouts against San Francisco over just 4 innings was a weird one. Gave up 6 earned runs, I remember that one. 7 strikeouts over just 4 2/3 against the Mets. Every now and then he can spike a strikeout day, and the Braves do cough up a bunch of strikeouts from the top end of this lineup. That's a 26.5% strikeout rate for those highlighted hitters. They pick up a little bit on the bottom end of this projected version. But they're definitely gettable for strikeouts. If you wanted to roll the dice a few times at 55 with Freeland, it's very low ceiling. It's not good. It might be loosely playable. You're looking at a pitcher down here. So, take it for what it's worth. That is an offset price compared to everybody else on the board, and he's not going to be popular. I don't think he has a good day. These guys could feed him a few Ks, though. There's definitely power showing. It's not a safe spot. He's under threat for sure. 76 on FanDuel, I don't think I would go there. Even with the ability to, the reasonable expectation of giving me innings for a quality start, I still have enough faith that this Braves lineup's going to hang 4 on him. And with the home run upside, one mistake after a walk, we're off and running toward that 4 run. So it's just not a good spot. That is a very good price, though. Rockies lineup against Sale looks really low end. 53-29 for Ezequiel Tovar, who's having a decent season, 21 home runs. The quality in the slash line has come and gone during the course of the year. 270, 296, 463. Just a 94 WRC plus. But there's good in there, right? There's a lot of good in there. There's growth as a hitter in there, despite a slightly higher strikeout, lower walk this year, a mediocre or a bad on base percentage, and a substandard WRC plus. I think they've gotten what they want to see out of Tovar this year, and it makes him playable in the right situation. It's just this is the wrong situation. Brendan Rodgers, 42-25, very, very cheap, but he's facing Chris Sale tonight. 93 WRC plus, hits the ball really hard, doesn't see the result for how hard he hits it. He's up to 13 home runs, but just a 147 ISO. Brenton Doyle, another good right-handed bat at the top of this lineup, 5,400, 3,100, having a great year, 22 homers, 25 steals, 204 ISO, 110 WRC plus. If you're considering taking Rockies just for like the low-owned, completely wildly contrarian angle against the best pitcher in baseball, these 4 guys at the top are your absolute priorities on both sides. And then take a pick of somebody down here. It's no matter what, you want those 4 guys in your lineup. Everybody who stacks the Rockies will do that, and you still got to get different in some other spot, or you'll just be building the exact same stack that everybody has. The decent news is, if you were doing that, which, again, doesn't seem like a great idea, Stallings is a moderately capable catcher with a little bit of power in his bat. He's hit 8 home runs in 243 chances. He's got a 183 ISO and a 112 WRC plus. Not terrible hitting fifth. Jordan Beck is a high-end, interesting young prospect. 136 plate appearances in the show. He hasn't given us much yet. .087 ISO, a 44 WRC plus, 2 home runs. Not great. But $2,800 on DraftKings is very affordable. Dead min price on FanDuel. If you're building this stack, I mean, that takes one of your must-haves out of the equation. But let's drop. I don't want to drop Doyle, the best one. Let's drop Tovar. We'll go second base, outfield, first base, and then another outfielder. That brings your average price down to $2,600 a piece. So they do help you come away from salary, ownership. It's just they also probably help you come away from any kind of expectation of any fantasy scoring because they got a 2.6 run implied total against Chris Sale. But Beck's got a little bit of upside, a little bit of power. Hunter Goodman definitely has that same upside. He's hit a lot of minor league home runs. Even in his limited appeal in the show, over 170 plate appearances, he's hit 8 home runs. He has a 195 ISO in that sample. He's just been crazy and consistent otherwise. 218 on base is pathetic. A 46 WRC plus is awful. But 11.7% barrels and 40.5% hard hits against any other pitcher is kind of interesting. Drew Romo, mix and match second catcher down toward the bottom of the lineup. Aaron Schunk, same thing and in the infield down the bottom. You really don't want these two guys, so match one of those three with your top 4 priority guys or swap one of them in for one of those guys to get different within your Rocky stacks that are already going to be pretty low owned. But again, not a good idea. The Braves, a much better idea. Michael Harris off the top. A mediocre 5.16 in the home run model kind of reflects his season. He's still hitting the ball pretty hard, but he's down in barrels, he's down in hard hits. These are just good numbers in a vacuum, but not compared to where he's been over the last 2 years. 9 home runs, 8 steals, and 353 chances, mediocre totals. A 124 ISO is not great, and an 81 WRC plus. So not really the best season, even in the half a season that he was healthy for. But a guy we've seen a lot of high-end performance from over the last 2 years. Leading off for this team against a gettable pitcher, there's a lot of upside even lefty-lefty. Jorge Soler, 45-32, 17 home runs on the year, a 187 ISO, but still monster power upside against the lefty and a mediocre lefty giving up a ton of premium contact. 8.71 might not be an accurate reflection of Jorge Soler's upside for a home run today. 14.17 definitely is for Marcell Ozuna. He's hit 37 this year, 267 ISO, creating runs 59% better than average, continuing his tremendous season. Matt Olson at 9.03, believable, quality lefty-lefty, 25 home runs at 211 ISO, kind of pulling things together. Another one of those players that's been pulling things together late in the season. The power numbers, at least, are coming around and getting to where they need to be. It's not going to be the elite power season that we've seen out of him in recent years, but it'll be all right. He'll probably hit 30. Sean Murphy, 37-27 across sites, 8 homers, 160 ISO in 210 plate appearances. Not a great season out of Murph, but he's missed a lot of time. He's really had trouble finding his footing. 3,700 is extremely cheap for a catcher who hits the ball as hard as he does. 2,700, he's in the mix for shares on FanDuel if you're going to this team. Laureano still hits the ball extremely hard when he makes contact. Steals a few bases, 8 home runs, 6 steals in 228 plate appearances. Been a little bit better than I was expecting for this team. Just a 101 WRC plus. Very high strikeout, low walk, so not great as far as putting zeros in your lineup goes. But when he does happen to connect with the ball, it can definitely still travel. Mix and match quality, though. Just another outfielder for 32-26. Orlando Arcia, 3,200, 15 homers on the season. He's probably going to end up with his same total as last year, 17 or so, but it won't be nearly as good a season. Everything else has been pretty bad this year. He's borderline playable. Whit Merrifield was better when first arrived with the Braves, but it looks like he's cooled back off. Overall, 4 home runs, 16 steals, and a 79 WRC plus. Not all that much better than Gio Urshela, who has a 76 WRC plus and is not much of a hitter. Chris Sale, Braves bats, don't play the Rockies or their pitcher. But again, 5,500, a couple SP2 dice rolls, you could probably get away with it from the bargain bin, and Rockies will at least be wildly contrarian, and people will scroll to the bottom of the standings and say, well, why the hell did that guy play the Rockies? Pirates and the Cubs. Paul Skeens on the hill for the Pirates. Debuted this year as just fully formed. One of the best pitchers in baseball, if not already the best. Probably a little early to actually award him the mantle of the best, but you can see a lot of similar numbers to what Sale's doing. He's actually above average by Stuff Plus, technically 5 points or so above Chris Sale, which is just stupid. 32.3% strikeouts, though, 6.2% walks, a 2.23 ERA with a 2.68 xFIP, a 12.9% swinging, 29.1% CSW. That needs to go up a little bit to be, elite of elite, but obviously he's making it work pretty effectively. Sub-1 whip is tremendous. No premium contact, no power to speak of against. Very good, similar to Sale at keeping the ball on the ground when guys happen to connect. It looks like it's by accident a lot of the time. He's an excellent option for a cheaper price than Sale. Against the Cubs lineup, that's at 21.3% for this projected version of the lineup as far as overall strikeouts, but does see a little bit of an uptick against right-handed pitching for strikeouts. Red Sox lineup dropped. Refsnyder, Duran, O'Neill, Devers. So they did move Refsnyder to the leadoff spot, but Duran in the 2 spot. O'Neill, Devers, Romy Gonzalez, Yoshida in the lineup. I don't think we talked about him. He has not found success this year, lefty-lefty, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 198, 287, 309. Doesn't really strike out in the split. You got to at least give him that. So Yoshida not a complete disaster as far as putting the ball in play, which can have its effect on DFS upside. And then Danny Jansen, Sedan Rafaela, and Nick Sogard rounding things out for the Red Sox. I'm glad we could agree with Boston management about moving Robbie Refsnyder into the leadoff spot anyway. So no lineups for this one. Skeens, for that price discount, definitely looks tremendous. That's what I was going to look up, was the Cubs strikeout rate against righties. This is still on the Red Sox. Come on. Active roster's down to a manageable 21.7 overall. So it's going to be another one where it depends on who's actually in the lineup. The other day when we were looking at it, we got up into like the 23.5%, 24% range. It's not crazy bad, but depending on who's in there, it's a little bit of an uptick. Kyle Hendricks, 6,200, 6,300. Seems like a why would you kind of a situation. A 6.75 ERA with a 4.55 xFIP. This is notably better than that, but still very, very bad. 15.2% strikeouts. Giving up a lot of home runs despite not really giving up much premium contact and power because there's just so much contact available that, of course, you're going to eventually give up home runs. Doesn't really pitch deep into ball games, 102 2/3 over 19 outings. Not a very good pitcher. 6 earned runs to these same Pirates as last time out in an inning and 2/3. Struck out 2, walked 3, gave up a homer. This is why I was saying, again, I'm kind of skeptical about the Pirates being below 4 runs. Oops. I know they're not great, but he's really, really hittable, and they're good enough to get him. It's not because of they just did it, but that at least informs it a little bit. Just a 6-mile-an-hour wind blowing in, 70, mid-70s or low 70s temperatures. Not like a crazy bad Wrigley night. I really don't get why the Pirates wouldn't be a quarter, a half a run higher. Hendricks has not been good. If you're looking in the Pirates' direction, IKF off the top of the lineup, just because of the spot ahead of the bats that you actually want, it puts him in play. He fills 4 positions for 27 on FanDuel, 2 positions for 39 on DraftKings. Inoffensive pricing for a guy who, at the very least, he's a light hitter, but he does put a lot of balls in play. 15.2% strikeout rate, a 3.7% walk rate this year. Pretty outstanding as far as putting bat on ball. It's resulted in 272, 317, 391. Nothing special about that. He's dead at league average WRC+. No power to speak of with a 119 ISO, just 8 homers and 9 stolen bases. He's a limited option, but he's a correlated scoring option if we're thinking that the Pirates might get there against Hendo, and he's a pitch-to-contact kind of a pitcher. Well, then taking their leadoff man, who's a contact hitter against that pitcher, does start to make a lot of sense. Brian Reynolds hits the ball very hard. O'Neill Cruz hits it a little bit harder. 9.7 and 46.4 barrels and hard hits for Reynolds. 16.3 and 55.1 for Cruz. He is quietly putting outrageously good bat on ball when he connects. It's resulted in 18 home runs, a 194 ISO. He's stolen 20 bases. It's a solid season. Once upon a time, people would be raving about a season like this. So he's shown growth at the plate this year too. I think he's very affordable at his pricing, particularly honestly on FanDuel where he still doesn't have that outfield eligibility. 3,000 feels really cheap. I have no issues going to O'Neill Cruz against Kyle Hendricks. There's a lefty bat, 9.39 in the home run model. Brian Reynolds has a 9.23. He's hit 22 and stolen 9 bases. He's got a 180 ISO, 123 WRC+. If you get McCutcheon after that, it's a nice spot, to round out your four-man there right off the top, 4,100, 3,100. He's hit 18 home runs. He has a 182 ISO, 111 WRC+ this season. He's been pretty tremendous. It's been a decline as far as the on-base used to be absolutely elite, but 338 is still very good. 238 average is one of the first things to go typically, but still putting good bat on ball, 12.7% barrels. Striking out a little bit more, walking a little bit less. That's where some of the on-base went. But there's still quality there on the right day for McCutcheon, and he is not expensive, particularly on DraftKings at 41. I think it's completely unjustifiable on FanDuel that he's 31 while O'Neill Cruz at shortstop is 3,000. That is utterly bonkers. I'll be interested to see if they ever add the outfield eligibility for Cruz, where they price him by comparison there, because that makes no sense to me. In every facet of baseball, O'Neill Cruz, outside of a slightly different on-base percentage, has been better. That's weird. It's like they don't put these things side by side. Rowdy Tellez, 32.25, just a mix and match quality option at first base. Not really hitting for the power that we need from him this year and not really doing all that much else at the plate. A 95 WRC plus with 12 homers and 377 chances. Nick Gonzalez, mix and match quality in the infield, second base only on DraftKings. 3 spots on FanDuel for a fair price. Over 295 plate appearances. We're just at 86 WRC plus. The on base is disappointing. The averages are all right. 5 homers, 3 steals. Not a lot of quality. Billy McKinney, once upon a time, could maybe be relied on for a little bit of lefty quality with bat on ball, but we're striking out 48% of the time in our 25 chances this year. He's barreled the ball 10% of the time, but it hasn't really resulted in anything so far. Obviously, unfairly small sample, but this is a player that we haven't seen much of in recent memory. Think he's just kind of holding a spot in this lineup right now. Just Money Grandal, 7 home runs on the year, 77 WRC plus. Jared Triola, 6 homers, 7 steals, and a 68 WRC plus. This is why you start to believe in that lower run total for the Pirates. It does trail off down the bottom of the lineup pretty hard. But the top end definitely looks good. Rowdy's playable in a pinch. Gonzalez is definitely playable. Even these guys are playable. Against Kyle Hendricks especially. I have no issues with it. I downright like the top 4. Cubs just showing mid-range power against Skeens. Obviously, there's not a lot of home runs or quality contact available. There's a ton of strikeout upside. So really not thinking Cubs. If you want to talk about, medium quality teams that are good at sequencing, that are good at getting on base, that can draw some walks and maybe frustrate the young pitcher, yes, that is the nature of this Cubs lineup. They haven't been incredibly successful throughout the season. But you do have some solid run creators up at the top. The top 5 there, that's an average WRC plus of 120. So on average, those guys are 20% better than average creating runs. And that's an average on base of 340. So they're exceptional at getting on base through the top 5. They do have some good run creators. They've got medium power for basically every hitter in that group. They've got some speed up and down the lineup. It's not an unthreatening Cubs team. This is a team that ought to be better than it is, honestly. Just an example of how sometimes, despite the numbers being where you'd want them, it just doesn't come together all in the right day, You got a bunch of guys that have 350 on base percentages, but the happenstance works against you every single time. You can still have a bad year even with those that Moneyball approach. Ian Happ off the top for 47, 33, 23 home runs and 11 steals, a 222 ISO. A very solid Ian Happ looking kind of a season out of him. Pretty low priced at 47 for a guy who makes this much quality contact. 33 right about where you'd expect to find him on FanDuel, but not in a good matchup against Skeens. Michael Busch, 4,200, has 16 homers, a 181 ISO, 117 WRC plus. Good lefty power bat, just 4,000, 2,800. Very, very fairly priced. would be a tempting factor in considering the Cubs. And like I was getting at, I started to say it, and then I broke off into more just discussing the actual numbers. But when we look for opportunities to be contrarian, I would prefer to do that with a team like the Cubs and some players that I actually respect a little bit than against Skeens than with a team like the Rockies against Sale. I think most people would probably approach it that way. If you said, hey, you have to pick one of these two spots, that's going to be the more highly owned, but they'll still be just as low owned in this spot against Skeens as the Rockies against Sale. So if you're determined to take a contrarian approach with a stack, at least do it with the better of the two teams and probably against the slightly more gettable of the two aces. Seiya Suzuki, 4,800, 3,200, 19 homers, 12 steals, a 351 on base, a 212 ISO, having a tremendous season. High strikeout at 27.1%, but puts great bat on ball. Doesn't really cost that much at 48.32. Not a bad opportunity. Cody Bellinger down to 5,200 after I was ranting and raving about his price yesterday, but that's probably still too high for the season he's having. 104 WRC plus, just a 153 ISO, 14 homers, 9 steals. Meanwhile, Mark Vientos is languishing at 4,500. 31 on FanDuel is more correct. Outfield and first base eligibility. Isaac Paredes, 44-29, 19 homers from him, a 117 WRC plus, a 174 ISO, but has kind of scuffled since joining the Cubs and is facing Paul Skeens today. So not a good spot for him. He is low strikeout and high walk, though. So that is one to watch as far as like which one of these Cubs might get in there and ruin Paul Skeens' day a little bit. Paredes maybe a little bit more on the board for that, 5.24 in the home run model. Nico, just a mix-and-match quality infielder in this spot, limited as far as on base and even his stolen base output this year, just 27. Kind of disappointing, 95 WRC+. Dansby hit his 13th home run last night. He's up to 15 stolen bases at 93 WRC+. Very gradually, at least pulling together some decent counting stats. He's very, very cheap at 36.29. Still puts very good bat on ball, like we always say, but bad matchup against Paul Skeens. PCA, 35-27, 7 home runs, 26 steals. Interesting speed, but bad on base percentage. Has been rolling recently, but terrible matchup. If you're stacking Cubs, you could throw them into the mix, but don't build that many Cub stacks, even in 150. Just a couple. That'll be fine. Miguel Amaya, mix and match catcher at the absolute best. Skeens, Pirates, Cubs, and Kyle Hendricks is off over there somewhere, standing in the corner like the kid at the end of the Blair Witch Project. Don't play him. How's that for a long stretch back for a reference? Blair Witch Project. When was the last time you saw that? I think the last time I saw it was probably in the theater. Actually, no, that's not true. Definitely saw it on video after it came out. Anybody remember that when that first came out? The big, like, crazy kerfuffle that it caused with the marketing? People like, oh my god, I think it's real. I think those kids are really dead. There's really a witch in the woods near Baltimore. Gotta give them credit, though. They did basically invent that found footage format, which was made people hundreds of millions of dollars in the horror industry over the last 25 years. Interesting matchup with Singer and Bybee on the mound, gotta say. Royals lineup looks like it's in. Both of these guys talented enough to get through their opponents. Bybee's the better of the two pitchers, but Singer hasn't been bad all throughout this season. That's the wrong team. Singer checking in with a 22.9% strikeout rate, 3.36 ERA, and a 3.50 xFIP. Solid 10.5% swinging, not a bad 28.9% CSW. He's not really walking hitters this year. He's managed his premium contact just under the threshold for hard hits. Much better on the exit velo. The barrels are within reason. Just an 8.6 degree average launch, so everything's on the ground. 2.5% home runs. Brady Singer quietly having a very nice season this year. Kind of back on form, back on expectations. Bybee on the other side, 143 innings and 26 starts. He's got a 3.65 ERA with a 3.67 xFIP, a 26.6% strikeout rate. That's really where the difference comes in. Outside of the strikeouts, these pitchers are pitching very, very similarly this year. Bybee a little bit higher end at the strikeout rate overall, the 12% swinging strike rate, a lower overall CSW, and actually Stuff Plus, he's slightly below average, Singer's further below average. But the CSW being a little bit lower than Singer's is kind of interesting there, given the higher end success and the higher end swinging strike number. Better keeping runners off base at a 1.13 whip versus a 1.24, despite a very negligible difference in walk rate. Probably a little slight amount of bad luck in there for Singer, but overall, definitely pitching well. 78-86, 82-87 on the other side for Bybee. The issues just come in around these low strikeout rates for these teams. 19.8% strikeout rate for the confirmed version of the Royals lineup, projected 20.6% on this side for the Guardians. You get a little push upward from Joneski Noel, but he's got a ton of power. He's hit 13 home runs in 152 plate appearances now. He's got a 331 ISO, and he's destroying the ball. Their best hitters at the top of the lineup and the first 4 hitters that Singer's likely to face have an average strikeout rate of just 13% across the 4 hitters. It's outrageously good. This team doesn't draw a lot of walks. Singer hasn't been issuing a lot of walks, so that's kind of a wash. Tough matchup to find success for Brady Singer. It's believable, but I don't know that you want to go chasing it, really. 7,800, you can have a few shares for sure. 5-8%, max, 10-ish. 86 on FanDuel, probably even less than that. 8,200 for Bybee and 87 across sites. He's facing a similar challenge. You got Paul DeJong driving up the strikeout rate in the heart of this lineup at 32%. He's hit 24 home runs in 446 chances. Not the outrageous pace that Noel is on, but you would assume in similar plate appearances that would cool off. He's probably not Babe Ruth. 217 ISO this season for DeJong. He's positive run creator despite his downside, but definitely pushes up the average a little bit. The top 4 for these guys, 17.5%. It's a little bit higher than it would have been with Vinny in there, but not by much. Because we got Mike Massey in there, very low strikeout. Bobby Witt, Tommy Pham, not terrible. He's more average-ish kind of a strikeout rate, but not terrible. So I think Bybee is going to be similarly challenged to Singer. Like him a little bit better considering the strikeout bump. Higher priced, but probably worth it. You can see the gap in projections, obviously. Probably lean bats a little bit. I don't know. That's tough to say. It's a 4 corners game for sure. I do think the bats are in play against these pitchers, good as they've been. Man, this just feels like such a 4-3 game. Neither pitcher was great for DFS. Neither team was great for DFS, but everybody sort of had a good baseball day. Right? Challenging spot here. If you're going to the Guardians, Quan, 48-31, nothing wrong with those prices for a guy who gets on at a 361 clip and provides great correlated scoring opportunities with a 128 WRC+. Andres Jimenez in the 2 spot is not entirely ideal, but he's all right. 251, 301, 336. Benefits from a better spot in the lineup if that's where he's hitting, and he's fairly priced at second base. 25 steals, just 7 home runs this year. Never became the hitter that he was once thought he was going to be, but is capable enough, and he's low strikeout, low walk, so at least he puts the ball in play. Jose Ramirez is an absolute superstar, 64-41, 34 homers, 34 stolen bases. Tremendous season out of Ramirez. 254 ISO, 136 WRC+. Fire away if you're going to this team. He's absolutely their top priority bat. Naylor, just 4,600. That seems kind of low for a guy with 29 home runs, a 229 ISO, a 123 WRC+. I get that he's not a great hitter, but he's a very, very good slugger. 245, 326, 474. That's not like wildly ineffectual when it comes to just hits. I really don't get why Josh Naylor is he's at like a Vientos level. We're going to have to go through this all next season with Vientos too? Strikes out just 16% of the time. 9.6% walks. That's not like a weird outlier. Last year it was 13.7% strikeouts, 6.7% walks. Naylor's driven in 100 runs if you care about RBIs. I really don't understand that price. If you want an even cheaper first baseman, you've got Kyle Manzardo projected 2 spots later for just 2,500. One of their top prospects, a high-end prospect overall in baseball, kid with a lot of thunder from the left side. Not a bad option. In between the two is Big Christmas, 4,100, 3,200. Still cheap, especially on DK. They are not paying attention. 331 ISO, 155 WRC+, 13 homers and 152 plate appearances. Absurdly good contact. High strikeout, fairly low walk. But the kid's been crushing the ball, and he's very cheap. Manzardo in the show so far hasn't been great. Just 2 homers and an 80 WRC+, but I assure you, he's a good hitter.
Lane Thomas, 4,000, 3,000, 9 home runs, 32 steals. A mediocre season coming off of a good one last year, but down to fair prices. 4,000, 3,000 is not expensive for the quality you can get from him. Last year, Lane Thomas hit 28 home runs, stole 20 bases, slash 268, 315, 468, 201 ISO, 109 WRC+. He's a good outfielder. Bo Naylor, mix and match quality catcher at best, up to 11 home runs, but pretty mediocre season. Brian Rocchio just here to play defense. If you're considering the Royals, Tommy Pham off the top is an interesting way to get started. Over the years, been a multi-category stat stuffer. Just 7 home runs and 6 steals in 383 chances. Not exactly great output from him this year. A lot of that was with that pathetic White Sox organization, though, so you got to forgive some of it. 121 ISO, 97 WRC+. Hits the ball decently hard. Not as hard as he did last year, obviously. Down from the year before as well. But this isn't nothing. There's a little bit of juice there. Fairly low strikeout, medium walk. Very playable for the prices in the outfield, but by and large, just another outfielder. What you really want him for is the correlation with Bobby Witt, an obvious superstar at shortstop, 66-43. He's at 30 home runs, stolen 28 bases, 273 ISO with a 172 WRC+. Mike Massey for 45-28 has decent lefty pop. He's hit 11 home runs in 279 plate appearances this year. He's got a 191 ISO. Doesn't make absolutely crazy contact. Medium strength barrels and hard hits are pretty low, but very low strikeout, a lot of frequent bat on ball, very low walk. So makes up for it in consistency of contact rather than necessarily like super high quality contact. Good lefty bat. Probably going to hit for better average and on base next year. Sal Perez, 48-31, 25 home runs this year. You got 24 on the board out of Paul DeJong, decent power in the middle of the lineup. And then MJ Melendez is up to 17 home runs in a 210 ISO in his 394 plate appearances. MJ's striking out just 23.9% of the time in that sample, by the way. He's actually pulled himself together quite nicely. 5.27 in the home run model. This is a guy who's absolutely made killer contact over the last couple of seasons. 16 home runs last year in 602 plate appearances. We're at 17 in 394 this year. That is a nice uptick in power. It went kind of unnoticed because it was a half a season because he hasn't gotten consistent plate appearances. He was in and out of the lineup in a lot of platoon situations when arguably he shouldn't have been. He cut 5 points of strikeout rate. He lost a little bit in walk, but he made up for it in actually delivering home runs on the quality contact. That was kind of what was lacking last year. He was making all this outrageously good contact, but the home runs were kind of fewer and far between. Again, 600 and some odd plate appearances, just 16 homers. MJ has had quietly a very nice little season here, doing exactly what they would have wanted to see from him as far as cutting the strikeouts down. Freddie Fermin still hitting for a good average, still getting on base at the one of the best on base percentages on this team. Actually, the best non-Witt on base percentage. But now that they've got Tommy Pham, who's at least capable of 320-ish, that's who should be leading off for this team now. Freddie Fermin can calm down, not worry about getting put in the leadoff role one day, and just continue doing what he's doing, which is pretty quality numbers from a $32,000, $2,600 catcher across sites. Michael Garcia for $4,000, $2,900. We were paying a lot more for this player earlier in the season. Hasn't had a great year. 7 home runs, 33 steals, a 286 on base, and a 72 WRC+. But there is a lot of skill in there. 43.6% hard hits, and he only strikes out 15.6% of the time. As much as he might look like he's flailing over here, he's not when it comes to the strikeouts. So just give me that quality of bat on ball and that consistency of bat on ball, and I'll roll the dice with it at these prices. Kyle Isbell, mix and match quality in the last spot. 7 homers, 9 steals, 78 WRC+. Priority bats are from like here up, but all 3 of these guys are playable. These 2 are the more playable too. Everybody in the Brothers is going to be sleeping on MJ Melendez in the middle of this lineup. Don't do that if you choose to stack up the Royals. Put MJ in. Top priorities probably go, obviously, 1, 2, and then you've got a lot of choice. Massey's good. I would probably prioritize Massey and MJ and get the 2 lefties in there. So I want like 1, 2, 3, or technically 2, 3, 4, plus 6. And then you can take your pick. Tommy Pham works. Paul DeJong works. Freddie Fermin works if you're putting Sal at first base. That's not a bad little stack. That 4-man version is at 4,800, and we're dropping a cheaper player into that to help the average come down. Let's say you go Tommy Pham as your 5th man. You're at 4,500 apiece. Again, Bibby's good, but he's not invulnerable. He's given up runs this year. 3.65 ERA is good. 3.67 xFIP underneath it. He's exactly what he looks like on the surface. but he's capable of giving up runs. Slight lean toward the bats on both sides. But I don't think it's a good DFS day for any of these guys. Bybee in his most recent start against these same Royals, though, did give up 3 home runs. Struck out 6, walked 2, 5 earned runs on 8 hits, lasted just 5 innings. That was just last week. Singer did not pitch in that series against the Guardians. His last start came against a similar Astros team, though. Fairly good comparison point. Struck out 6, 2 earned runs on 5 hits. Was pretty good there. I slightly favor bats. I'm going to go... Where's Vegas? Yeah, I'll go Guardians bats slightly over the Royals bats. Bybee slightly over Singer. Bigger gap probably between Bybee and Singer than there is between Guardians and Royals. I think that's the right way to put it. But it's all very close, it's all very playable, and probably will end up just falling short in the middle. So, Steven Matz just at a 13.4% strikeout rate, a 6.18 ERA, and a 5.22 xFIP in the show over 6 starts and 27 2/3 innings this season. He has made 6 August outings. That's right, I was talking about this when I first dropped it into the sheet here. 6 August outings in AAA, including 2 and change innings, and then started getting ramped up a little bit more. 4 innings, 4 1/3, got up to 5 innings against the White Sox affiliate back on August 21st. Most recently, just went 3 innings against the Cubs AAA affiliate on the 27th. Gave up 4 earned runs in each of those games, struck out just 3 in each of those games, and again capped out at 5 innings. I don't think we're really considering Steven Matz, even at 62, even at 64. Seems pretty low end. We're probably working with like around these median projections as your ceiling, with no ceiling beyond these median projections. Once upon a time, mid-20s strikeout type pitcher with a little bit of talent. Was always somebody you could target because his results were very roller coaster-like, but would have his good games from time to time. It wouldn't completely knock me out of my chair if he had a good start here, but I really don't think we're getting much more than 5 innings, and I think we're dealing with a lot of mediocrity. Vegas has the Brewers at a pretty decent total. So I think the guy to focus on for value pitching is the other guy, Aaron Savali, 6,300 going up against a gettable enough Cardinals lineup. He's been all right. It was really ugly to start the season with Tampa Bay. He's managed to pull things together down to a 4.59 ERA, a 4.33 xFIP, 21.7% strikeout rate. Not ideal, not where we were hoping he would take the uptick to, but that's an average-ish strikeout rate. He's just very much an average pitcher. 4.10 home run rate on fairly medium quality contact. That's a little bit high probably. A little bit of bad luck in there. But not a ton of bad luck because those are appreciably fairly high. They're upper middle premium contact numbers. He's put too many guys on base, but he's not really walking that many. 7.9% is a manageable walk rate. 1.34 whip is very high. Last time out for Savali, faced San Francisco. Very solid 2-hitter. No runs over 7 innings. Faced 25 hitters. Struck out 7. Walked 2. 7 shutout innings. Start before that against the Athletics, he went 4 innings. 3 earned runs allowed. Struck out 3. Walked 4. Kind of a meltdown. I think we had him that day. 6 shutout innings against the Guardians in the start before that. 4 hits, 4 strikeouts. Since joining the Brewers, it's really just one shaky start. Faced the Dodgers in his first one, gave up 4 but struck out 8. The 4 runs came on 3 home runs and 5 hits. That was arguably not a good start, but it was okay. Gave up 5 runs and 3 earned to the Twins at Minnesota in a 4 strikeout, 4 walk, 2 home run game. That one, again, not great, but only 3 of those runs were earned. And then 5 earned runs on 7 hits to the Nationals over 4, struck out just 3 and walked 1 with a home run allowed. Those are your downside starts since joining the Brewers. There's more good than bad since joining the Brewers, and he's still very, very cheap. The Cards are just okay. There's not really a ton of power in this lineup, but there are some okay power bats. 2 guys over 20 home runs on the season. Nobody over a 200 ISO. They're not great at drawing walks, but there's a couple guys who can. There's a couple experienced veteran hitters. There's a couple guys who are very, very low strikeout, like Nolan Arenado. like Brendan Donovan. Mason Wynn at the top is having a very good season as a young player. It's not the best spot in the world for Savali. It's probably more limited on FanDuel for 8,100. I really question the upside because he's not all that likely to find a big strikeout upside. For 63, I'm just not concerned. Just give me 5 okay innings for 63 on DraftKings, and we're perfectly fine. Easily capable of giving us the 6 that we need and a quality start on the FanDuel side, though. I don't want to totally discount him, but he does struggle at that price for strikeout upside. Cardinals bats, a little bit in play. Let's see if we got the confirmed lineup. Trey says the Yankees suck every time I play them. They're dog water. You didn't have them yesterday after we talked about them? They had them at the top of the board. They were pretty good yesterday. Harold Haas, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. How do I feel about the Rockies? Over 2, we'll correct that and say runs, full game. I mean, their implied total is over 2 runs. I don't feel great about it. But just based on, at least coming into the show, where Vegas was, they were implied for 2.65. So it naturally does suggest that the over 2 runs would at least be somewhat likely. But you're really starting to stretch things if you're chasing that one. Don't bet against Chris Sale with the Rockies. Probably not a great spot. Trey, is this a football comment? Baker week? Because I might actually agree with you. Yes, I do. He is projecting very, very well currently. And he's one of the guys that's I got to go in and just take a look at the numbers. And I'm still wrestling my way through the week 1 projections, making sure everybody's where they ought to be, making sure there's no crazy outliers. I actually built him into my placeholder just because I really liked the look of that spot overall. And then when I saw how he projected out after the fact, I was like, ooh, a little bit of confirmation bias there. But yeah, he's looking pretty solid. And I think it makes sense to get to that team early in the season. So, cards bats. Mason Wynn off the top. I was checking for lineups. That's what I was doing. Doesn't look like we've gotten him on Labs. It is out on Underdog, though, so let me do this. All right, Cardinals bats, Mason Wynn off the top. As I mentioned a minute ago, having a decent season. Very low strikeout at 16.8%. He's drawing a fair walk rate at 6.8%. He doesn't hit the ball particularly hard, but he has managed 12 home runs. He's swiped 10 bags, 281, 329, 420. There's nothing exceptional, unfortunately, about this for DFS. That's just a really good baseball season. But he doesn't really stand out for our needs. He does create runs 9% better than average. Since moving to the leadoff spot, he's been kind of a good correlated scoring piece, so you at least get that upside. He's playable, but it's not really the ideal way to fill shortstop in my mind. That is a super high priority position. 4,300, 3,000 for Alec Burleson, first base and outfield on both sides. He's hit 21 home runs to lead this lineup, stolen 9 bases, a 173 ISO. Shows the lack of true power upside. Just 40.2% hard hits. This is just over the threshold of what we want. 6.8% barrels. Not really a true power bat, but does measure out to a 10 plus in the home run model as their best power hitter of this season and of today. And he is a positive run creator. Arenado just at league average for run creation. 15 home runs. Mediocre slash line. Pretty bad in terms of his power output, his premium contact this year. Right now he's just low strikeout, put the ball in play, and the occasional home run. 15 homers in 548 plate appearances is pretty disappointing, though. Donovan, in between Arenado and Goldschmidt, 36-29. A capable enough bat for price. 3 positions on FanDuel. Second base where you'd want him on DraftKings anyway. 11 home runs, a solid 333 on base. He gets involved, but he's just a correlated scoring option. Cleanup is a weird spot to have Brendan Donovan hit regularly. Goldie for 42, 3,000. Has 20 home runs this year, but that's all he really has. 99 WRC plus, just a 166 ISO. He's managed to steal 8 bases in kind of a throwback. He's still making good contact, but it's been lousy, and it's been lousier than it looks, I think. He is very cheap, and the 42 might actually be even an overreaction, even though I'm saying I think he's lousier than the numbers might look. That 42 is exceptionally low for a guy who already does have 20 home runs this season. He's at least playable. Lars Nootbaar for 34.28 is playable, 9 home runs, 5 steals, and 324 chances, a 105 WRC+, plus, a good stat stuffer, multi-category contributor. Jordan Walker, 32.25, 1 home run on the season in 96 plate appearances, was hitting pretty well in AAA, 52 WRC+, plus, had a big day the other day against the Yankees when he first got called back up. A lot of talent, and as we looked at the other day, did not have the bad year that everybody seems to remember him having last year. He got off to a very bad start, got sent back down, got called back up. This year it didn't work out that way. This year he just kind of stayed back down until now. But he made 465 plate appearances last year. He finished the year with 16 homers and 7 stolen bases. He created runs 16% better than average. He got on base at a 342 clip in the show. Hit 276, 342, 445 overall. This is a very good rookie season. It was kind of an overreaction, I think, to send him back down as early as they did. Ivan Herrera, backup catcher quality, 3 home runs, 4 steals, slashing 281, 343, 380, kind of effective there, a 105 WRC+. plus. Michael Ciani, 25-23, 2 homers, 14 steals. Walker in AAA this year, 377 plate appearances, 263, 326, 427. Was actually 6 points below average for run creation, striking out just 19.4% of the time, a 164 ISO, 9 homers, 4 steals. So his major league stretch was actually better than this year's AAA stretch even. But probably should have just left them alone. On the Brewers side, Jackson Chourio coming off of, remember yesterday when I said early in the show that he was going to have a monster performance? Well, we found out that he hit that grand slam, and he's probably just going to end up having the best week of his entire season this week against me head-to-head after I traded him. 4,500, too cheap. 3,200, probably still too cheap. He's up to 18 home runs and 20 steals. He's going to go 20-20 as a rookie. 183 ISO, 118 WRC+. Plus. He's been absolutely tremendous since the All-Star break. Up to 7.2% barrels and 45.8% hard hits. For a 20-year-old kid, that is outrageous contact to make in your rookie season, striking out under 20%. He's been fantastic and still remains underrated at the top of this Brewers lineup against an entirely gettable lefty. Jackson Chourio is a high priority play today. Blake Perkins, 29-28 across sites, 6 homers, 18 steals, and 98 WRC+, plus, a mix and match quality player. At least he's cheap to help build out a stack, but not an ideal option. You could get outfielders in a lot of different lineups. William Contreras, 52-33 for a catcher who's got 20 home runs, a 186 ISO, and a 129 WRC+, plus seems like a bargain to me. Willie Adames hit his 29th home run, I believe that was yesterday, might have been the day before. 29 homers, 15 steals, a 219 ISO, a 124 WRC+. Plus. He's been outrageously good this year. I was saying all through the beginning of the season I expected the numbers to cool dramatically, and they cooled a little bit in terms of the average the on base, but not nearly as much as I thought they might. That is a good year for anybody. Brewer Hicklin, dead minimum price on both sides in the outfield. He's made 2 plate appearances. Brewer made 2 plate appearances for the Milwaukee Brewers. That's interesting. Don't know anything about this player. Brewer Hicklin is 28 and a half years old. Had 21 home runs and 42 stolen bases across 453 plate appearances in AAA this year. 364 on base, a 118 WRC+, plus, a 237 ISO. He's been hitting for a little bit of power and stealing some bags down in the minors, but he's older than everybody else. He's 28. But just the raw skill set for the dead min price if he's hitting 5th, why not? If you're rolling the dice on some Brewer stacks against a mediocre lefty anyway, there's some quality there, and at least if he gets on, he quite clearly seems to have some upside for steals, so can pad some stats out that way. Gary Sanchez never stopped hitting the ball hard. Mashes when he gets an opportunity. 9 home runs and 230 plate appearances this year, a 180 ISO, 105 WRC+. Plus. Rhys Hoskins for 36-29 has 23 home runs, a 206 ISO. Still a good power bat from the right side of the plate, 8.78 in the home run model today. Joey Ortiz for 33.27 and Bryce Terang for 47.28. Good way to round out a stack. 9 home runs, 8 steals for Ortiz, creating runs 7% better than average. 7 home runs and 40 stolen bases for Terang, creating runs 10% below average. Not getting on base quite enough. If he had the on base that Ortiz does, look out. But at worst, they're mix and match quality. 47 is a little high. That's reflective of his role that used to be up in the leadoff spot, or reflective of when he hits leadoff. Doesn't do that against lefties. That's a little high for a guy who's really just stealing bases this year. Turang's a much better buy at 28 on FanDuel. He's 200 more than Mark Vientos. He's hitting probably 9th today against same-handed pitching. 7 home runs, 40 steals, 10 points below average for WRC+, a 101 ISO. And he costs more than Mark Vientos. Did they just have like a chimp in a chair throwing darts at cards with prices on them and just assigning them randomly? Like, seriously, what the hell are we doing? Soto. Brewers bats on top, I think. Yeah, Brewers bats. Aaron Savali value. Cardinals bats. No Steven Matz. Yanks up near the top of the board. I think they were number 2 overall, showing some pretty tremendous power upside for the usual suspects against Andrew Heaney, who we've loved to pick on over the years. But Heaney's actually been better managing premium contact and home run output this year. We're slightly below the threshold for hard hits. We're slightly below the threshold for exit velo. Slightly below a egregiously bad barrel rate. He's a lefty that can definitely get nailed and definitely has a bad habit of slipping up and giving up home runs to power hitting teams. Just a 3.11% home run rate. This is very good for him. Last year, 3.59 was not bad. 4.52 the year before, and I think he was in the 5s in years before that. He's always been a decent strikeout pitcher who can spike upside games. 23% Ks this year on 12.5% swinging strikes is not bad. 26.8% CSW with that kind of a swinging strike rate is very bad. 6.4% walks, not terrible for putting extra guys on base, but just an 80 rating by Stuff Plus. 3.95 ERA with a 4.24 xFIP. There's good, there's bad in there with Heaney. We know that the Yankees are susceptible, especially with their free-swinging nature for some of their key hitters. They're susceptible to getting beat by mediocre pitching and mediocre lefties when they really should not be. But it's happened time and again. So, I mean, as much as it's a super obvious spot for Yankees bats, if you rolled a few dice of Andrew Heaney at 6,000 as an SP2, as much as some of those other $6,000 pitchers are on the board, given his strikeout potential, it's not the craziest idea. I greatly prefer the Yankees bats. I think they're going to crush Andrew Heaney today. But as your DFS dart throws for just 6,000 go, it's not the craziest thing. If you're going to consider Kyle Freeland for 55, you can definitely consider Andrew Heaney for 6,000. There's 7 points of strikeout upside difference between them. Carlos Rodon on the other side, 85.96, differently priced across sites. Prefer him on DraftKings, obviously, at the lower price. Capable enough pitcher, just under a 26% strikeout rate this year, a 4.31 ERA with a 4.19 xFIP. The runs and the run, the potential run number and the actual run number, a little higher than you would want for, a guy who's supposed to be ace caliber number 2 pitcher in this staff. He's given up too many hard hits at 41.3. We're over the threshold there. 90.4. We're over the threshold for exit velo. Fly ball pitcher at an 18.3 degree average launch and a 9.9% barrel rate. We're right in line with expectations being over 4% home runs. This is a team on the other side that does have power, does have the ability to hit some homers, does have some good righty bats. Not the best spot in the world for Carlos Rodon. 22.3% strikeout rate for the projected version of the Rangers lineup. We do have their confirmed. Let me drop it in. Come on. There we go. Ooh, that's different. I'm not going to undo it to see what that change was. Looks like Justin Foscue dropping into the lineup there, and some of these guys are different than what was in there a second ago. Top end is secure, though. Basically, oh, no, actually it's not. Excuse me. No Corey Seager. All right, uptick for Carlos Rodon based on this lineup, and downtick for the Rangers stack. I like Rodon a little bit better now. Marcus Semien off the top of the lineup for the Rangers, 49-33, 18 home runs on the year, a 150 ISO, 95 WRC+. plus. You can see the top 4 hitters in this confirmed lineup are all below average run creators now. Not great seasons out of any one of those guys. Young, missed most of the season, so you can forgive him a little bit. But he's been not great in his 135 plate appearance. He's been all right. 5 home runs, 3 steals, 96 WRC+, plus, not great. 160 ISO, not great. Adolis Garcia has been a real disappointment this season overall. 21 home runs and 11 stolen bases, just a 173 ISO, 11 points below average for run creation, despite still hitting the ball very hard. That's really all he's doing this year. He's cheap. 44.32 is not a bad price, but I don't know. Diminished version of the lineup with no Seager up here. Wyatt Langford hitting second, 38-3000, not ideal. 9 home runs, 12 steals, a mediocre rookie season out of him. 95 WRC+. plus. He's cheap. If you're stacking Rangers, they are affordable against Rodon. Nathaniel Lowe for 37-28, 11 homers on the season, a 109 WRC+. plus. One of only 2 positive run creators, with some small sample in there, but one of only 2 positive run creators in this projected or in this confirmed lineup. The other one's Carson Kelly. Justin Foscue for Deadman 2000 at first base on DraftKings, 2100 at second base on FanDuel. 22 pretty empty plate appearances so far. In the minors, AAA, 219 plate appearances, had 9 home runs, 201 ISO, 130 WRC+. Plus. He was getting involved. For the dead men, if you're stacking this team, you can put him at first base if you need it. Save 17 from Nathaniel Lowe. 21 at second base. You can obviously play them together, but you're probably not skipping Marcus Semien to put that guy in your lineup. Ez Duran, Carson Kelly, Jonathan Ornelas at the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match quality throughout. The most playable is probably the catcher. Carson Kelly, 31-26, has 8 home runs and just 264 chances and a 109 WRC+. plus. Mediocre ISO, but a good on-base option. 18.9% Ks, 8% walks this season. Definitely a downturn there for the Rangers, though. That's Andrew Heaney magically became probably the most appealing part of the Rangers. Yankees bats, way up top. Carlos Rodon, Andrew Heaney, then Rangers bats. I am surprised by that. Just this funky version of the lineup. Didn't strike me like right. I ranked the Yankees without actually talking about them. You guys know who these guys are. Several of the best home run hitters of their respective generations. Giancarlo Stanton, I believe, became the only active player with 10 seasons of more than 20 for the home runs. I don't know if it was 25. Might have been 20. Monster season out of Stanton for when he's been on the field. 383 plate appearances, 25 home runs at 259 ISO, 124 WRC+, plus, destroying the ball when he connects. Yes, he's high strikeout. It's always been a thing, but who cares? The ball travels very, very far when he connects. 5,000 appropriate on DraftKings, 3,300 not inappropriate on FanDuel, maybe a little bit cheap on FanDuel. Glaber in the top spot, if that's where he's hitting, 4,000, 2,900. Again, just continues to need to just get on base in the best lineup spot in all of baseball. He's very cheap for his talent at second base. Despite a mediocre season, he is a talented player. Any given slate upside for sure out of Glaber Torres for those prices at second base. Helps you offset the prices for Judge and Soto, who are really expensive. 65.44 and 69.5,000 for those 2 players. That said, 37 home runs for Soto, 51 home runs for Aaron Judge, a 181 and a 218 WRC+. plus. Love Jazz Chisholm down here in the 5 spot, 5,300, 3,400 across sides. Still 3 position eligible on FanDuel, is ideal second base, third base positioning. 9.98 in today's home run model. He's got a 10.6% barrel rate on the year, 22 home runs, 32 stolen bases. I don't care if his colleagues consider him overrated. He's been great since joining the Yanks. I'm enjoying watching him. And I would play him in DFS. I was so, you don't know how much time when Max Kepler scratched from that lineup I was talking about at the beginning of the show yesterday. I spent the better part of that full hour before lock trying to figure out how I could keep Jazz in that stack and not have to go to Glaber at second base. And I just couldn't make it work to keep it as a full stack with a expensive pitcher. So I ended up making the pivot because Glaber in the leadoff role just as good. But I really like Jazz Chisholm in this lineup and what he does for this team. Anthony Volpe at 44, 3,000, 11 home runs, 25 steals, just a mediocre season, 132 ISO and 94 WRC+. Counting stats good, everything else mix and match caliber. Jose Trevino, I prefer Austin Wells, and we might get him even with the lefty on the mound. He's getting more and more of the plate appearances, and he's succeeding more and more often. They are still kind of inclined to go for the platoon, and Trevino's a tremendous pitch framer, so he's very good on the behind the plate, like as an actual catcher. Might want to have him in there working with Rodon today, too. So we'll see what we get. Trevino's loosely playable. Wells is downright just straight up playable. Downright straight up. Alex Verdugo, DJ LeMahieu, mix and match caliber at the absolute best, and probably not even that this year. So again, to reiterate, Yankees bats, Carlos Rodon, Andrew Heaney, Rangers bats. Heaney's just a dice roll and probably only on DK. 3 games to go, coming up on 4:30. Somehow we are still going a little longer than I expected. But 55 people out there watching. You guys rock. Showing up for a little bit of an early show. Blowing off work, hopefully. Ignoring the boss. Putting the DND on your phone. Popping in some headphones. Acting all busy. You go like, oh, that while you're just listening to baseball in yours. That's the move. Monte Pritchard downright, straight up. Not so. All right. Let's keep this thing rolling. Walker Buehler seems challenged for 5 innings plus. 7,000, 6,900. 11 starts this season. 49 innings was hurt for the majority of the season. A 5.88 ERA with a 4.78 xFIP. Just 17% strikeouts. Just really has not looked like Walker Buehler by and large. The pitcher that we remember from a couple years ago. 4 2/3 in his last outing. 4 runs, but only 2 of them earned. Just 4 strikeouts and a walk. That was against Baltimore. Obviously a very good team. But the start before that, just 4 innings against the Mariners. 3 earned runs on 7 hits, only 1 strikeout, 3 walks. Just 3 strikeouts with 4 walks on the board over 3 1/3 against the Brewers in his first start back earlier in August. 3 earned runs, 4 runs allowed on 4 hits total. Just the lack of true depth is concerning. I think the Dodgers' goal continues to be let him throw 5 innings. If he can get there, if he can give us, hopefully better and better 5-inning performances, and gradually build him up over this last month and hopefully have him, in better form for the playoffs. Right now, it's pretty challenging. Even with an Angels team that has a 26% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup, just a little bit challenged to see the upside in 5 innings. 7,000, we've got better prices on other pitchers that have similar kind of a upside, similar kind of a ceiling. 69, I don't think you're getting your quality start on FanDuel. And they're frisky enough bats in this Angels lineup, honestly. There's a couple of low strikeout guys, not too many, obviously, with a 26% rate, but that is pushed up by Nico Cavadas at 48.6. You've got 2 guys in the mid-teens, and they are 2 of their key bats. Bad as Anthony Rendon has been, he's still not striking out much. He's just not hitting for any kind of power, a .052 ISO and no home runs in 222 plate appearances. Shanuel at 16.6% is very low strikeout. Little bit of power, very good on base, very high walk percentage. Shanuel's been a decent hitter this season. Neto is not low strikeout, but he's not terribly high for a guy who's got 20 home runs and 25 stolen bases on the year. 25.5 out of Taylor Ward is a little bit up there. But I mean, nothing about this, even with some of these high numbers, really, really pushes the Walker Buehler just given the current state of the pitcher. Detmers on the other side, in his major league sample this year, 12 starts, 63 innings. A 6.14 ERA is obviously very bad, but a 4.14 xFIP underneath it is much, much better. He's a good strikeout pitcher. Has been in the show when we've seen him in the past. Last year, 148 2/3 in 28 starts. 4.48 ERA with a 4.27 xFIP, a 26.1% strikeout rate, 12.2% swinging strikes. Year before that, 22.6% strikeouts, 11.1% swinging strikes, good ERA, decent xFIP. Reed Detmers is demonstrably a major league caliber pitcher and might even be a good major league pitcher. He's just turned 25, so he's still on the young side. So it makes sense that they're, with them not going anywhere, they were kind of managing his, I guess, service time. I don't really know what they were doing. But he spent most of the year in the minors. 6 innings in his most recent minor league start. That was against Houston's affiliate. 1 earned run on 2 hits, struck out 9. 7 innings against Texas's affiliate. 1 earned run on 6 hits, struck out 9. 8 innings against San Francisco's AAA affiliate on August 16th. 1 earned run on 3 hits, struck out 11. 5 strikeouts over 5 1/3 against Oakland's affiliate. Bad game, gave up 6 earned runs. 3 strikeouts, gave up 6 earned runs in the start before that one, over 3 2/3 to Seattle's affiliate. 2 problematic outings there, but a 9 strikeout game before that run. An 11 and a 10 strikeout game earlier in the season against Colorado, both of those against Colorado's affiliate. Back-to-back starts. Reid Detmers, if nothing else, is a good strikeout pitcher. 25-3 in the show this year, 9.7 on the walk rate. He is a problematic walk pitcher when he's not having a good day, and that's where we really might run into the wall with this play. The Dodgers are very good at drawing walks. 9% collective walk rate for the 9-man projected, with most of their best hitters in double digits. And it's pretty low strikeout rates, 19.6 collectively, but Mookie at 11.8, Freddie at 15.7. There's a lot of threat there, plus Ohtani 22.4, but who cares? It's Shohei Ohtani. So in no way is Reid Detmers a safe play, but I do think we're okay for innings. Like I could, if everything's going great, I could see Reid Detmers going 7 plus here. I don't think they're going to pull him after 5 or 6 innings, like, you know, not out of necessity, not unless it's out of necessity. So I think he's full bore, and he does have strikeout potential for just 65, 7,000 over here. This is where it's a little shakier because you do need that quality start, so we got to keep the Dodgers off the board almost entirely. We got to get that 6th inning or more. So I think the projection is accurate-ish given the opponent in terms of the median, but I do think he spikes a little bit of upside into, you know, this kind of territory. Not saying he's got the same upside as these guys, but he's got upside to around their medians, you know, additional 10 FanDuel points. So maybe a little bit of sneaky meat on the bone for Reid Detmers at the end of the night, but that said, let's consider the Dodgers bats as well. All those good walk rates, all those outrageously good superstar caliber hitters. Shohei Ohtani for 7,000, 4,800, second best hitter in baseball. 44 home runs, 46 stolen bases, a 324 ISO, a 169 WRC+. Just a fantastic asset for DFS. Like I said yesterday, just every night for the last 2 months, I've gotten that just Shohei Ohtani hit a home run notification from Yahoo Fantasy. 63-39 for Mookie Betts, still with second base and shortstop eligibility on FanDuel. Outfield only on DraftKings. 14 homers, 13 steals. He's a star. It's Mookie Betts. Don't think too hard about it. Freddie Freeman, 52-34, 21 homers, 288, 383, 498. We're a little tiny sliver of a diminished in the triple slash. That's it. That's the only downturn from Freddie. He's still extremely low strikeout, actually a better strikeout rate than last year. Higher walk rate than last year. Still makes excellent contact. We're slightly diminished in barrels, but we're up slightly in hard hits. Down a little bit from 2 years ago. So there is nothing wrong with Freddie Freeman. He's just affordable. 52-34. Good prices. That's not egregious. You could make a Dodgers stack with Freddie as your best player in it. Leave off the 2 most expensive superstars, the 2 best players on the team. But if you told me you went with a 3-man Dodgers, let's say, that was Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, and Will Smith for $4,900 apiece, I would have no issues with that against Reid Detmers. You could include Tommy Edman in there and get to a 4-man, make it 45. Wait, what did I say it was originally? 48? 49? It's actually a nice price cut. Tommy Edman does a lot for your pricing. Let's say you include Mookie. Make it the full 5-man including Mookie but skipping Ohtani. That's only $4,900 apiece. Mookie, Freddie, Teoscar, Will Smith, Tommy Edman, if that's their lineup, in direct order, correlating with one another. You do a lot worse. Yeah, you want Ohtani, obviously, but it drives your price way up. That is a sub $5,000 price on average for that 5-man stack is pretty killer. It's not quite as cheap as the Twins were yesterday, but it's pretty great. A lot of multi-position through the bad bottom end of the lineup, and honestly, you know, having Tommy Edman in there is appealing. I say bad, but it's not really quite as bad. It's just Enrique Hernandez and Chris Taylor having the worst seasons of their entire careers this year doesn't help it. But Miguel Rojas is having a decent season in his 280 plate appearances. Edman, 51 pretty decent plate appearances so far, and a good quality player for counting stat upside, and especially for DFS. His overall quality comes and goes with his on-base percentage. but a decent enough bat to mix in for our purposes from down this direction. And all this multi-position eligibility, it makes them really easy to stack with because you've got all these cheap guys that you can just move around the board. So like, ah, shit, this doesn't fit, but what if I do that, drop Chris Taylor in over here and take the chance on him? Both Hernandez and Taylor over the years have given us a lot of success. Just none of it really has come this year. Between the two, I'd say Enrique's having the better season. I think that's pretty easy to say. 215, 272, 347, 74 WRC plus. Lower strikeout, 20.2% versus 31.3% for Chris Taylor, hitting the ball. Harder hard hit rate, but a lower barrel rate. Put these two guys together, it's not even a good season. Super high priority, top 6. Playable bottom 3. Not bad on the Dodgers side. On the Angels side, I talked through a lot of it when I was talking Walker Buehler, but just to reiterate, you do have some gettable strikeout guys, but a couple of low strikeout options there. Shanuel is mostly here for his hit tool, his on-base ability, and to be a correlated scorer. They're asking him to do a little bit more than that by hitting him in the 3 spot. 12 home runs on the season. He's not really a power bat. Taylor Ward probably belongs down there. Shanuel probably belongs up here, regardless of who's on the mound. Ward does have 19 home runs this year, a 175 ISO. He's followed in the lineup by Zach Neto, who's got 20 and 25 home runs, stolen bases with a 196 ISO, a 113 WRC+. Neto has been their most consistent and their highest end player all season. Fits in at shortstop for a very fair price. He's not off the board. When I say that, I don't love occupying shortstop with a guy like Mason Wynn all the time, good as Wynn is in real life baseball, Neto's a different story. He's just affordable. He's put up good numbers for these prices at the position, so he's not really a bad option at shortstop. Rendon's a bad option at third base anyway you cut it. Logan O'Hoppe, though, pretty decent at catcher, 11.6% barrels, 46.5% hard hit, 17 home runs. 96 WRC+, plus, the quality comes and goes, but there is power there. Mickey Moniak's just pretty bad, 12 home runs, 6 steals, 86 WRC+. Plus. Brendan Drury's been atrociously bad this year, 33 WRC+, plus and 290 chances, just 3 home runs. Probably the last we're going to see of him. Joey Adele, 3,500, 2,900. He's up to 20 home runs and 15 stolen bases in just 438 plate appearances. He could get to 2020 pretty easily. 201 ISO and 92 WRC+. Plus. It's not the greatest season in the world, just 284 on base, a 211 average. If he ever figured out how to get on base consistently, he would be a very good player. There's a lot of flaws in Joe Adele's game, but there's a lot of upside for such cheap prices. If you're going to the Angels, and it's not a terrible spot against Buehler, you can do worse than putting Joe Adele in. And then Nico at the bottom of the lineup, 21 on both sides, first base only, has a lot of power. He's got 1 home run and a stolen base on the board in 37 plate appearances that have otherwise been terrible in the show so far. Nearly a 50% strikeout rate, kind of flailing up there. But if he's going to be pitch to contact level against Buehler today, there is a lot of power upside for a very, very cheap price at first base. He can make things work. He's not ideal. It's not even great to put him in instead of Shanuel, but you could pick off a pretty big scoring event with that player at that price. Dodgers bats. Reed Detmer's value on DraftKings. Actually, I'll put it on both sides. Dodgers bats. Nah, Dodgers bats, Angels bats, Reed Detmer's. That order. No Walker Buehler for me. Luis Castillo, top of the board against the A's. Pretty gettable A's lineup. Doesn't look like we've got it confirmed just yet. It is Trevino in the Yankees lineup. I think it's exactly what we looked at. Neither of these lineups in. Targetable ball teams on both sides in terms of the just quality that they've put up this year, the number of good starts that they've fed to opposing pitchers. But the two pitchers are a little bit different animals. We've got Luis Castillo on the mound. He's got a 24.6% strikeout rate over 165 and a third, 28 starts this year, a 3.65 ERA with a 3.77 xFIP. It's not the best we've ever seen Luis Castillo, but it's also not bad. He's had a pretty decent season. A little bit high on the hard hits, a little bit high on the exit velo, manageable in the home run department, but he could give up a little bit less power. That would have helped the ERA. The xFIP is a little bit higher than I would want it, but the solid strikeout rate against an A's team with a 25.4% strikeout rate, we could be in for a big day from Luis Castillo. There is a little bit of danger in this A's lineup, though. We've got these 4 hitters up at the top that are all well above 200 ISOs. 246 average ISO for those top 4 hitters is pretty tremendous. Average home run output of 25 across those 4 hitters in a mixed sample of plate appearances. These A's shouldn't completely be overlooked. They shouldn't completely be trifled with. There is, at the very worst, a lot of power here. You got Seth Brown lurking down there with just 12 home runs. Even Zach Geloff at 16 with a 163 ISO. 9% barrel rates for all 3 of those hitters in a row. Daz Cameron's been crushing the ball this year. He's been mixed in terms of the actual results, but the quality of contact is extreme this year for Daz Cameron. So it's a high danger spot for Luis Castillo. He's got to pitch well, but he's more than capable of doing so. Just 4 strikeouts last time out against Tampa Bay in a disappointing start. He only gave up 2 earned runs on 6 hits, but that is not a good strikeout total. Didn't book the quality start, but got the win. 5 2/3, 2 earned runs. 6 innings of 5-run ball in the start before. That's not going to get the job done. He struck out 9 against the Giants, but he gave up 3 home runs. Definitely used him that day against the Giants. The Pirates faced them, gave up 4 earned over 5 1/3, 6 strikeouts, but again, no quality start. Took the loss in that one. Solid quality start against the Mets, just 1 earned in 6 innings, struck out 9. Also had a 9 strikeout quality start against the Tigers. That's the upside. We're looking at around 6 innings, 9, 10 strikeouts is about your ceiling. He's pretty reliable to give you 6. On the right day, you can get 7. That's been his season high, is 7 innings. But you do get a reasonable shot at depth and a quality start basically every time he takes the hill. 165 1/3 in 28 starts. Got to be among the league leaders. Ninth in innings pitched. 2 of the guys ahead of him, Skubal and Wheeler, have made 1 fewer start than everybody else up at the top of the board. League leaders Logan Webb, predictably, but he's made 29 starts, 183 2/3. Lugo behind him in 28 starts has 179 innings. But Castillo, that's 14 innings short of what Lugo's put up. One of the better pitchers in baseball for depth for a reliable 6 innings. JT Ginn on the other side, or Ginn. I think it's got to be Ginn, right? 2 N's? I think it's Ginn. I'm going with Ginn. 1 start so far, 3 outings in the show, 2 bulk relief appearances. In his first one, he went 2 innings. Back on the 21st, he struck out 3 Rays, no hits, no runs, faced 7 hitters. Inning and 2/3 against the Brewers, one earned run on 1 hit, struck out 1, walked 2. And then the full start was against the Reds at Cincinnati, went 5 innings, 4 earned runs, 2 home runs allowed, 4 strikeouts, and a walk. In 14 starts in AAA this year, 72 1/3. He had a 5.72 ERA with a 4.89 xFIP, a 21.2% strikeout rate, and a 9.2% walk rate. Was sitting on a 1.24 home run per 9. This is as a 25-year-old in his first AAA action. That partially explains the pretty significant home run totals over here. Luke Raley, the home run pick of the day at 10.29, because why not? Didn't want to go to the most popular Mariners bat, but we're seeing an absolute ton of power showing for Seattle. Makes JT again pretty unplayable to me. I don't think we get much in terms of strikeout upside. There's a lot more downside than there is upside, even against this scuffling Mariners team with all their strikeouts. I tend to lean Seattle today. 5,800, we've got other value darts to throw on DraftKings. 6,300 on FanDuel with a pretty significant probability that we're not getting a quality start. I really don't see it. I think you're just dealing again with the pitcher that's going to come in around the medians. Mariners bats J.P. Crawford for 42.29. Continues to be ill fit in the top spot in the lineup if he's not getting on at a 380 clip like he did last year. We're at just 301, and they've moved Victor Robles, who was getting on at a 341 clip, out of that spot in exchange. He's got a ton of speed. He belongs in the leadoff spot if he can get on base, and the other guy can't. 341 on base out of Robles, a 116 WRC plus over his 215 opportunities. Just a 301 with an 89 WRC plus out of the shortstop at the top of the lineup. We'll see what they do. They know enough to make that change, but we'll see whether or not they do it. Right now, it makes Robles a lot less playable than he might otherwise be, but he's at least on the board. You consider him a wraparound from the bottom of the lineup. Crawford is playable. He's cheap, 4,200, 2,900. He does have power. He's hit 9 home runs on the season, but just a 136 ISO. The home runs have come on mediocre contact. There's nothing special outside of a 10-plus rating in the home run model from a very affordable shortstop. Julio Rodriguez, 5,000, 3,200 across sites and 11 in the home run model, 13 on the year, 20 stolen bases in a down season for him, just a 112 ISO. But he's up to a 104 WRC plus. He's been a little bit more involved. 9.5% barrels, 46.2% hard hits. The premium contact is, kind of there. It's down from the past 2 seasons pretty significantly. But if you just took this and took the name off or just gave those numbers to, let's say, Josh Rojas, you'd be like, wow, Josh Rojas is hitting the ball hard this year. So there's some good to find for Julio, and he's very affordable at 5,032. Cal Raleigh for just 4,500. Maybe they're not aware that he's hit 28 home runs this year, 214 ISO. He's really just a home run hitter. He draws a decent walk rate, but we're dealing with a 298 on base. Hurts his WRC plus. He should be better than that for getting on via the walk as much as he does. But really just a power bat. But we've gotten a lot of power at a premium position, a catcher for an affordable price. 45.31 is affordable for Arosarena, considering how he fills categories. 18 home runs and 20 stolen bases out of him this year. A very positive 113 WRC plus. Despite his own personal dip in quality, he found a way to stay involved. He drew more he drew walks this year, not more walks. 12-2 last year, 11-3 this year. 25.3% strikeout rate. But it kept him involved enough by comparison to, say, Julio, 2 spots higher, just 6.9% walks, had a bigger impact on his WRC+. Neither guy's been good this year, but either guy is capable of giving you counting stats, and if you get it right, both guys do, and you go off and win yourself a slate. Justin Turner, entirely skippable in the heart of the lineup, 31.26. He's moderately playable as well. He's got a 110 WRC+, 347 on base, but he's really just here for correlated scoring. Put the ball in play, hopefully get on. Showing a little bit of power at 6.32 in the home run model. He's hit 9 this season, but not ideal. I'd rather have other players in this lineup. Jorge Polanco, 34.29. It's kind of the same thing as Turner. He's hit 13 home runs, but just a 140 ISO, 90 WRC+, not giving you the consistent correlated scoring that Turner at least does. Strikes out 30% of the time. Luke Raley hitting the ball very hard, 9.8% barrels and 41.3% hard hits, has 17 homers on the year, 9 stolen bases, a 202 ISO, 118 WRC+. Was probably front of the brain because we looked at him yesterday and I noted, hey, quietly having a really nice little season here, at least for DFS. 4,100 outfield and first base on DK, 3,000 same positioning on FanDuel. Looks very, very playable in this lineup, especially, depending on who you're stacking him with. Having him outfield or first base means I can get both these guys, not occupy all 3 outfield spots, still take a high-end outfielder from another team. Works out pretty well to use him in a stack. Robles at the bottom of the lineup. Greatly prefer Robles between the two. I think he's interesting as a wraparound. If he leads off, he's a lot more appealing today, but he's playable from down there. Interesting bat for just 37.28, but yet another outfielder in this lineup. Top end of the A's is where you want to live if you're rostering this team, but honestly, 1 through 7 at least has shown some power. And Jacob Wilson down here, we talked about him the other day. He's up to 31 on DK at shortstop, still just 22 on FanDuel. Based on the minor league numbers, the kid can hit a little bit. Low strikeout, decently high walk rate, good on base and correlated scoring option. I've used him a couple times as just a shortstop one-off just to get cheap at the position and do other things. And I know I talk a lot about not doing that at short. But he was noteworthy cheap against bad pitching in spots. Today he gets Luis Castillo, so it's really not the same appeal. But I did want to call it out because he's interesting down lineup as long as he keeps getting opportunities for a cheap price. The guys above him, though, from 7 up, are just been good. I mean, Daz, the results have been mixed. 190, 257, 336, 30 points below average for run creation. You could say the same about Geloff at 205, 268, 368, and 18 points below average for run creation. But look how hard both guys are hitting the ball. Both at 9.3% barrels. Daz has a 50.5% hard hit in a small sample of 152 opportunities. So the contact is definitely out of whack with the results. And I tend to lean contact over results. So both of these guys are in play. Seth Brown is very much in play, but he's both on this year's contact, a little bit of this year's results, and more on a little bit of recent history with that player, getting him at just 29-26 with his lefty power upside. Kind of interesting. But again, all of them suffer from the matchup against Luis Castillo. 46-28 for Shea Langoliers, who's got 25 home runs this year at 231 ISO, following 3 other guys in the 200s by ISO. This is the part of the A's lineup that you really want to focus into. We talked about the ridiculous 25 home run average for those first 4 hitters, the excellent ISO. Everybody's a positive run creator. You do have some strikeouts there, but you've also got the ability to draw a walk with some of those hitters. Everybody makes pretty good contact. J.J. Bleday, the least of which, 8.6%, 36.6% hard hits, throws his 20 home runs, his 216 ISO into more question than the other 3 hitters. But that's not completely unrealistic power output from him, and he's a pretty decent bat with just an 18.9% strikeout rate this year. So these are your priority A's bats. Brent Rooker's your top guy, 55, 38, 33 home runs on the season at 283 ISO. He's been tremendous basically end-to-end this season. Lawrence Butler for just 42, 3,000, 20 home runs, 13 steals. Another player just not priced up in line with the performance so far. We're up to 360 plate appearances now. His created runs 37% better than average. Tremendous contact profile. Fire away with Lawrence Butler shares if you're stacking A's. Not a good day to stack A's, though. Castillo, Mariners bats for one of the few times all season. Really nothing A's, but you could sneak the A's bats in there if you wanted to at the top end. They're not a terrible contrarian option. Probably still prefer the Cubs among the contrarian teams. Not because Skins is on the mound, but because they're a little bit higher end in terms of the consistency. The average give you a little bit higher of a floor. But the A's have a pretty high ceiling on the right day. It's just the amount of times they're going to approach that ceiling is diminished by the matchup against Castillo. Last game up, which is good because we're somehow still approaching 5 o'clock, despite our early start time. Still get out early, though. We're not bad. Let's see. Do we have lineups here? Doesn't look like. Give us a little reload. Yep, no lineups up. So Kyle Harrison's a good pitcher, 7,700 across sites. He's got a 22.3% strikeout rate, a 4.22 ERA with a 4.26 xFIP. 9.6% swinging and 27.4% CSW. Definitely needs some work. That'll drive up the strikeout rate overall. Definitely needs work on cutting premium contact, cutting launch angle a little bit, keeping the ball in the yard. Probably a little bit lucky here, given the contact. We're over the line significantly, and over the line on those 3 marks. But it's more indicative of these are 4. If he's your number 4 starter, those are okay numbers from such a young pitcher, and it's just, kind of part of his growth trajectory, one would hope. I was expecting him to be a little bit better than this out of the box, but I think they're decent enough numbers. 77 is a good enough price. It's just a okay opponent, and especially against lefties, they're not bad. So I don't love the spot for Harrison. I think it's playable, but it's not great. On the other side, Ryan Nelson is a lot more interesting. He's up to a 19.6% strikeout rate. He's got just a 5.2% walk rate. That's pretty sparkling, down to a 4.22 ERA. The xFIP is at 4.05. That's fine. No real issues with it. Again, he's no ace, but we've seen a significant uptick in quality in, I think it's 11 starts now. And as I said, the first time we talked about it, I think it was 2 starts in, there was a demonstrable change in how he delivers the ball and where he delivers the ball with his 4-seamer. And it made a big difference in how stuff was working, and he has maintained that quality. That first game came on, I know I did this a little bit at the top of the show. He had a 5-inning start against the Dodgers on July 2nd. Allowed 1 run, struck out just 3. From there, he had the 1-2 strikeout game back on July 24th against Kansas City, where he gave up 4 earned runs. A 4 earned run game over 5 innings on August 4th to Pittsburgh, but he struck out 7. Every other game was 3 or fewer runs, and he only gave up 3 once. That's 11. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. No. 5. No. 6, 7. 7 out of those 11 outings have been quality starts. Strikeout highs of 9. In that stretch, he struck out 9 3 different times, and he struck out 7 2 times. This is a pitcher who, coming into that stretch, had a 16% strikeout rate or 17. Seen a big uptick. He's been pitching really well. He's been pitching deep. He's pitched into the 7th inning several times. He's completed it several times. 7 1/3 against Philly, 9 strikeout game. Against the Giants team with a 27.2% strikeout rate for the projected version of this lineup in this ballpark that just helps pitchers tremendously. Looks like a great spot for Nelson, whose price has not budged on DraftKings at 72. FanDuel responded a little bit, 88, but again, I wouldn't have had a problem with him in the 9s based on how he's pitching. Total bargain here. One of the best values on the entire slate, pitching or hitting. Diamondbacks bats. Geraldo Perdomo in the top spot, 32.28. He's cheap. He gets on base, 346 on base, a 107 WRC plus. Really just a correlated score. Maybe he steals you a base, but needs help from his friends to get involved. Corbin Carroll, we're up to 102 runs scored, 19 home runs, 22 stolen bases, a 105 WRC plus, a 198 ISO. All of a sudden, again, this does not look like a terrible season outside of the average and the on base. Everything else has really kind of come together for him. It's been a monster couple of months. Totally playable, 53.35. The price is starting to correct back to where it used to be. 41.31 for Lourdes Gurriel, 17 homers. A decent hitter in every facet of the game, but not an exceptional hitter in any facet of the game. Always playable because he's always fairly priced, moderately owned. Christian Walker is supposed to be back in the lineup, 5,300, 3,300 across sites, 23 home runs for him. Very good contact profile. Nice to have him back in this lineup. Josh Bell, presumably, just slide into DH role. DH first base, one way or the other with those two. 3,900, 2,700 across sites for Bell. He's got 18 home runs at league average for WRC plus, but kind of a mediocre hitter. Low strikeout, medium walk. He's capable. On the right day, he gives you a nice output, but very middle of the road at the position. Randall Grichuk for 32.25, mix and match quality outfielder, really just another outfielder. Relatively low strikeout, does put good bat on ball, 9.1% barrels and 45.1% hard hits. Just doesn't see a ton of results, a 178 ISO and 6 home runs. Does have a nice 118 WRC plus to settle the tie though, 336 on base percentage. Junior Suarez, just 4,235 on DraftKings. 3,500 on FanDuel is the correct price for the player that he's been for the better part of the last 2 months. He's up to 23 home runs. He's got a 207 ISO, a 107 WRC plus, 10+% barrels, 40+% hard hits. He strikes out a lot, and he's not very consistent in terms of getting on base, but this is a relatively good Junior Suarez season, especially considering how he started out the first 2-3 months. Kevin Newman and Herrera at the bottom of the lineup are entirely skippable mix and match quality plays at best. The Giants lineup, as good as Ryan Nelson has been, and as much as I want to use him today, I think you could deploy some Giants, and you could probably hedge if you build any kind of Ryan Nelson position, at least a couple shares. You get Elliot Ramos at a 9.12 in the home run model. You've got a lefty bat like Yastrzemski and Conforto bookending him on either side with their decent mid-range lefty power, a 191 ISO for Yaz, 202 ISO for Conforto, 12 home runs, 15 home runs for the two lefties, Ramos in between with 20 and 420 plate appearances. He's got a 212 ISO, 127 WRC plus. All three of those guys are 1-4 or worse strikeout options though. Matt Chapman is at 24% strikeouts himself. 21 home runs, 13 steals, a 194 ISO, very good contact profile, and a good run creator this year, 18% better than average for run creation from the third baseman. He's very affordable, but high strikeout guy, or at least medium strikeout guy, looking like a target for Ryan Nelson. Patty Bailey for 34.26, 7 home runs on the year, moderate output from the catcher this season, kind of disappointing year from him over 379 plate appearances. Tyler Fitzgerald, 4,800, 3,400, 14 homers, 16 steals, a 245 ISO, and 259 chances. Been really good since coming up 259 plate appearances ago. 48% better than average for run creation from the shortstop. Kind of like Neto, good output for the money. Not a bad option if you go a different way than a superstar shortstop. Lamont Wade further down the lineup than I like, getting him 394 on base, 123 WRC plus, but it doesn't play as well from down there. I'd rather have him leading off. 29 and 20 cross sites for Grant McCray. He's a mix and match quality option. 3 home runs and 56 plate appearances with a 226 ISO so far. Can definitely deliver a little bit of power. The premium contact's been good in the show, but a ton of strikeouts in only 56 plate appearances. And then Brett Wisely, 221 mediocre plate appearances. Totally skippable bottom of the lineup. And that is that. 10 games up and down. Took us a while to get there. Feel like we meandered, but we started early, so that's good. It's only 5 o'clock, which works for me. A little bit more work on the DFS football projections after the show's done. I'll get the baseball stuff updated, obviously. And then I got to hightail it on over to my fantasy draft. But pitching board one last time here. I'll also pop chat up to see if you guys are talking about anything interesting, asking any questions. Trey loves Nelson. and he was watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Dennis 4G, serious question. Do we like Ventos today? Yes. Why not? What's their run total? Yeah. Solid 4.31 run total. Puts them in the middle of the slate. Not terrible. They're going up against an incredibly gettable pitcher in Cutter Crawford. He's not bad, but he's also not good. He's given up a lot of homers this year. Vientos checks in at a team leading 12.39 in the home run model, and despite all his good performance, he's gone down in price on DraftKings at 45, only 31 on FanDuel. Appreciate that, Jake. Very good stuff for you guys as well in the chat today. Good job, everybody. If you haven't already done it, as I break down the last pitching board here, hit the like button. Subscribe if you've never done that. We're going to be all over the place in the next couple of days for shows as far as football and everything. Going to be much calmer starting week 2, but a lot of midweek activity screwing me up this week. I'm looking forward to them, but it's definitely not helping the schedule. Clintwood asking, Tara, with a weird Texas lineup, would you be happy to one-off any of them? It's not the craziest thing in the world. What was their run total? 419, also respectable. Rodon is gettable, but like on the better end of gettable still, I think, given his strikeout ability. I never really have an issue one-offing Marcus Semien, especially because he leads off at second base at a fair price every single day. So the answer is yes, as long as we're talking about Semien, Adolis Garcia, and then Josh Young is a maybe. Outside of those 3 players, I don't know that I would do it. Oddly, one of the guys on my list would probably be even a lefty-lefty, a cheap Nathaniel Lowe, but that's getting a little silly and stretching your question. I think it's probably just Semien, Young, and Garcia, and they're all cheap. You're probably okay, all 3 of those guys in the 8s in the home run model. It wouldn't be my first thought, like, oh, let me go target Carlos Rodon and grab a Rangers bat in this one-off spot. But if it's a good price position fit, like you got a second base spot open and you don't have $5K to spend, Marcus Semien is not bad. 38 for Young, 44 for Garcia. So it just depends on what hole you're trying to fill. But yeah, loosely playable. Chris Sale, top of your board. Highest ceiling on the slate, but followed immediately ceiling-wise by Paul Skeens, who's got an excellent ceiling himself against the Cubbies. It's just Sale's got a little bit more upside. If Sale's rolling along correctly, there's no reason he can't throw a complete game against that Rockies team. I don't think they give Skeens the complete game shot. Maybe like if he's got history on his side, he's throwing a perfect game or something, then maybe. But in very few scenarios do I see Skeens throwing a complete game. So Sale gets the upside on innings, but they're close on the median and they're close on the realistic ceiling. It's just if Sale gets up and runs away with his start. Luis Castillo, comparable pitcher for 10,000, 9,000, reasonably close in the medians and a very similar ceiling to both of those pitchers, honestly. He's right there with those guys. So if you need the discount in savings, there's nothing wrong with going to Castillo against the A's. It hasn't been his best year, but he's been good. Tanner Bybee, tough matchup against the Royals. Very good price for a good pitcher. Cutter Crawford, don't really believe. Like we just looked at, he's got a little bit of upside for some strikeouts. He's very cheap. I think it's fine to go to that option. But out of everybody from, let's say like Kyle Harrison up, he's probably my least favorite, despite where he projects. Rather pay 96 for Carlos Rodon, 85 for Carlos Rodon, even against the Rangers. Chris Bassett against the Phillies at 84-74, I think is a little bit more playable than Cutter Crawford against the Mets at 79-75. I really do. David Peterson on the other side of that game has a little bit of extra strikeout upside, and he's a lefty going up against the downside of the lefty challenges that the Red Sox have, even though there are a few very good righties against lefties in that lineup. Singer just challenged by a low strikeout Guardians team, and he's been lower strikeout himself this year. 86-78, I could see him succeeding. More often than not, though, that KC Cleveland game, I think, lands, like I said, 5-4. Nobody had a successful DFS day, like 1 or 2 hitters on both sides did. The pitchers were both fine, but not great for DFS and not great for price. That feels like how that game ends up today. Harrison challenged by that Diamondbacks lineup, but a good pitching environment and a very fair price at the end of the night. I don't mind him. I skipped over Ryan Nelson, one of my favorite pitchers on the board, possibly my favorite option at 72, discounting that these guys are obvious. Outside of the less than obvious options, love the spot for Nelson. And the idea of putting him together, even with Sale, that brings Sale down to 9,000 apiece. And really, if Nelson was priced at 9,000 today, it would be a high DraftKings price, but it wouldn't be out of step with where he's been over his last 11 starts. And he's got a great matchup. So the fact that you can put those two guys together and average Chris Sale down to 9,000, if you make, let's say you make it Nelson Castillo, you're at 81 apiece. He is an asset today. Cue the total abandonment of his uptick in quality, obviously. Savali's been decent since joining the Brewers. For 63, you can find out on DraftKings. 81 on FanDuel, a little bit more challenging, but a gettable spot. Heaney against the Yanks feels like a pretty hard no. On FanDuel, I don't see the need to go there. There's just other ways you can play it. He does have a little strikeout upside, though. He's not off the board on FanDuel. At 6,000 on DraftKings, I think he's very much on the board as a dart throw. Tyler Phillips, a little bit of a stretch, 75-67 against the low strikeout Blue Jays team. Buehler, don't think you get the innings. JT Ginn, I see a lot of upside for the Mariners on the other side of that one. Reed Detmers is kind of interesting for 65 down here. I think he's more interesting than like all three of these guys, less interesting than Heaney because he costs more. So for the bargain bin, I'd probably go safest option, cheapest and somewhat realistic option with a little bit of a ceiling and maybe the highest ceiling out of these guys. And then comparably high ceiling, but probably the lowest end option at the highest price. Steven Matz, pretty hard no against the Brewers. Freeland Hendricks, definitely hard nose. If it's named Kyle, it shouldn't be on your pitching share. Michael Knack, last man in on FanDuel GPP. Stanton or Teoscar? Ooh. Tough. You know what will inform that? The home run board. Probably Stanton. But those two players will be pretty close. There's Giancarlo. The hell's Teoscar? Teoscar down here, 9.63. So yeah, if you're home run hunting on the home run upside, definitely going Stanton. I would typically lean toward targeting Andrew Heaney just most of the time. And Giancarlo Stanton would be one of my favorite hitters. If you just offered me like everybody in baseball, but you can't have the absolute superstars. You can't have the $6,000 players. Anybody below 5,500. Stanton would be one of my first choices against Andrew Heaney for a home run. He really, really dead honestly would. He is one of the best home run hitters of his generation. So, yeah, I'll go that way. Yankees, a lot of power at the top with Judgy, Soto, Stanton, no strangers to the top of the board. Cal Raleigh showing a ton of power, though, just behind Judge in the home run model for Seattle. And a bunch of the Mariners. We had a lot of Mariners above the magic number. There's one. There's one. There's one. There's one. There's another one. There's another one. That's a lot of home run potential for Seattle today. I'm probably going to go there in my lineup. You can consider it. They've been really bad. I don't know that I've succeeded with them once this season, but I'm willing to go back there again. And I do think they're a little bit improved. Don't know what I'm stacking them with yet. Don't know what pitcher I'm going to use yet, but we'll get there. A little bit of time to build today. Holy cow. Gotten 34 text messages since we started this. Expensive Dodgers in an Ohtani revenge game. I forgot about the Ohtani revenge factor. I don't think he wants revenge on the Angels. I think he just wants to get there and send everybody a fruit basket and tell them he feels bad for them having to still play there and then go upstairs and thank upper management for letting him walk. Very happy to not be on that team anymore. Don Playback on Bullish. Do I like Nelson for Arizona 6K today? Yeah, Ryan Nelson, we just talked through that entire play. I think you probably asked that. He's not 6K, though. He's 72. I assume that's who you're talking about. But yeah, absolutely love Ryan Nelson in this spot today. That's it, guys. Let me go out of here, get some of the football stuff taken care of, get this update taken care of, and then grab an Uber or hitch a ride with somebody and get over to this draft. Tomorrow, you'll have projections. They're going to be up in the morning for the baseball slate. 99.999% unlikely to be updated through the day. Going to be at the U.S. Open all day. Don't think I'm going to be back by 6 o'clock. I'm almost certainly not going to be. So apologies for that. Enjoy the slate. No show tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow night. I'll be doing some stuff on football updates. I'll be writing some content for the actual football feature pieces. and I'll have a better idea of when football show will land on Thursday. Gonna knock something out on Thursday. We'll do a single game show, obviously, for that game. We'll probably do an early baseball show again. So just keep an eye out. All the more reason to subscribe here. Keep an eye on Discord if you're not in there already. Jump in. Check out acemind.io for all your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps gets you 20% off your first month. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. Buy your socks from Bombas. Use AMC movie theaters. Somebody's got to sponsor us if I just keep mentioning products. That's about it, gang. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll see you on Thursday. Adios.